All right. Hello, Fortinos, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is October 15th, 2025. And as we keep watching and praying, we will keep diligently seeking and searching. And tonight is another exciting one. The last one was very exciting, to see that the directions around the temple reveal the comings and the events of the end of days. It was awesome. Just another perfect picture revealing the revelation that we've been showing here for 8 years now. It's so incredible. Well, tonight we have another new one. This one was led to us by our brother Pete, and tonight's is led to us by our brother Jake in something that he found in the Gospel of John. What we're going to see tonight is this picture of a few chapters within the Gospel of John that are a prophetic fractal. Now, you guys that have been around for a while, you'll understand what I'm talking about. This picture of what was, has been, and what was, is, and shall be. It's always this picture of three. Sometimes there's also that a first portion. So like there's four, but really these three events, and we see it from the creation. We see it through the end of days. We see it through the feasts of the Lord. And you're going to see that again tonight within these four chapters that we're going to share on. The first one, briefly, just to show a quick picture of it, because it's pretty straightforward. And then we're going to go into the depth of the next three. And it's incredible because it's in chapters that we don't generally go into very often here at Ministry Revealed, because we focus on chapters 8 through to the end of John. And we know how John is it's kind of like it recycles, if you will. It goes from John 20 and then loops around, and it will end at John 20 again. And today, these chapters that we're going to cover are chapter 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the book of John. And when you see this, as we get going into it, you're going to see it by what the verses, the first verse or two, the way it opens in chapters 5, 6, and 7. It's absolutely incredible when you see it. And then when you have your prophetic eyes, your prophetic understanding on, and we go into these verses within those chapters, you're going to see the exact same wording of the events and the timings that we know of when he comes as the white horse rider for his 40 days, when he comes in the 7th year of seals and for the mid-trib, and when he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives right to the end, to the Jubilee. It's awesome. So thanks to our brother Jake for leading us and showing us this one. And tonight we're going to go even deeper into it. There's so many incredible things. So with that, we're going to get started, but I also wanted to put this out for you guys. I want you guys to know I am planning right now on starting another channel. And this other channel, I'll let you guys know once it's up and the first video or two get put on there. I'll let you guys know. And I'm going to be having the videos done in at least 5, but probably more like 10 different languages. So not only will the translation, where, if it's English and you just want to read the subtitles, that's fine. But I'm going to have, most likely, the way it'll have to happen is I will add links within the description of the English one and of all of the other languages, and have separate channels for each of them in these other 5 to 10 languages. So it's going to be exciting. But the reason for this channel is this one goes into the depth. It lays everything out. We go into the nitty gritty, and we talk about dates and timings, because we're also looking for that cherry on the top. We're trying to discern and to understand the timing of the first coming of the Lord, when he will take his bride. And we believe we've got this understanding, and we're prayerful that we believe we understand for this year in a Hebrew year, not a Gregorian year. And we know that we're looking for late January to early February. We'll even touch on it a little bit here tonight. But the new channel will be short teachings that'll go, give or take, about 15 minutes, and we'll just have a specific focus, like on a few things within the revelation of the Gospels. within, a few things of the 14 years, within a few things of the tribes in the wilderness, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And I'll be doing at least one a week, and I'll be reposting the shorts there as well. They will all be translated into at least another 5 to 10 languages, where you will hear my voice in those languages like Spanish and Italian and French and all of that other stuff. And the purpose for those is, it's a place where people will be able to share little short teachings, where within them it's not long, it gets to the point. I won't have any opening summary or any opening explanation like I do here. The reason I do here is because we cover so much, and when new people come, they don't know what we're talking about. When we start talking about the revelation of the Gospels and the 14 years, it blows their mind and it makes no sense. So I always have to go talk about the playlists. Well, on that one, I'm not going to, but at the end of it, I will direct everybody to come to Ministry Revealed. But all of that is something that's being worked on right now in the background, and hopefully within the next week, hopefully less than 2 weeks, but within the next week, support's needed for it, because I got to pay for these programs to get this done. But if there's enough support that comes in, which I think there is, it won't be an issue, because it's not super expensive, but it is time consuming, and there is some cost to it. So I wanted to let you guys know so you can look forward to that, and it'll be a great place that you can share with your friends and with your family, other prophecy watchers, and they can go there. I'm not exactly sure what the name is going to be of that one yet, but something about, end time prophecy -MR. So I'm not going to say Ministry Revealed, but MR. And then it'll have in brackets the language that it is. So we're looking forward to that. Hopefully that excites some of you guys, and makes it easier to give little pieces to share without overwhelming people, because this channel here is the overwhelming one. This is the one that goes into everything, and I talk because I want to share, and it's ministry, and I want people to be at ease, and I want to share things as well. So there's always a lot more talking here. And yes, I know you guys are aware of that. So with that, now that that's out of the way, let's do what I always do. We're going to go to the playlists. And also, for anybody that is new, because that other stuff isn't up yet, you can go to ministryrevealed.com. When you hear me talking about the forum, like Jake today shared this info in the forum is a place that you can go to ministryrevealed.com, go to the menu, click on forum. It takes 5-10 seconds to sign up. Doesn't cost anything. There's 1,400 plus people from all over the world in there. People watching and praying, diligently seeking and searching, and news and events and all sorts of things being shared in there. You can come and join us there. But also, if you're new, you've probably already heard me say some things that are already jarring you, which is the mysteries of the end of days, and the mysteries within the Gospels and throughout Scripture is beyond what you've ever been taught that it is. You've been taught that everything is from the Gospel of Matthew, in the prophecy of the discourse of Matthew chapter 24. You've been told that the end of days is 7 years. Well, when you understand the mystery of who the Gospels are speaking to, the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, you'll realize that the end of days is a period called 14 years and a little portion called above, that's 50 days. And to begin to understand that, I always recommend everybody come to this playlist right here. You can find this playlist also on Ministry Revealed. Go to the intro, or since you're on YouTube already, you can come right here. When you click on that, you're going to come right here. This will bring up. Let me make sure I'm paused. And this is what I always recommend. The first 4 teachings. The first 22-minute one right here is just an intro to the next 3 videos. Give you a little insight as to what you're going to begin to understand. The second one begins in a 30-minute teaching to reveal to you what people have thought were contradictions within the Scriptures. Okay, like when you go to the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and you read one story, like in Luke's Gospel, he's arrayed before the cross, going in a gorgeous robe, which means white, radiant, beautiful. In Mark, he's arrayed in purple. In Matthew, he's arrayed in scarlet. Well, what's the purpose for these differences when the stories supposed to be the same, wouldn't you think? What's the purpose? It's not just perspective, as we've been told throughout history. There is prophetic revelation in each and every one of those differences, and we have proven it here over the past 8 years, probably hundreds of times in different ways within the Gospels. And what you see is the example I just said with Luke. It's a prophetic picture of Luke representing the bride of Christ. Okay, white, radiant, a beautiful white, gorgeous robe. But Mark and Matthew, being purple and scarlet, is like Revelation 17. They're the tribulation colors, purple and scarlet, with the woman riding the beast. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet. And Mark and Matthew have purple and scarlet being described. What's the reason? Okay, this is what you're going to begin to understand and what it reveals in the end of days. And the answer is going to blow your mind, because what has happened is the first will be last, the last will be first. Matthew, Mark, Luke becomes Luke, Mark, Matthew. And what's happened is, when you understand that, you will realize that the disputes that have taken place and the disagreements and the going back and forth on whether pre, mid, or post are true, you're going to see that the reason everybody can support their claims of pre, mid, and post from Scripture is because they're all true. But it's not all true in a 7-year period. You're going to realize that it's in a 14-year and a portion called above. We just generally say 14 years. The revelation of 14 years, there is 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. The pre-trib happens in the above, but right at the start of the 50 days. And the mid-trib great multitude happens in the midst of the 7th year of seals. And, of course, the return, feet down on the Mount of Olives, is when the Lord returns to begin the 14th year of tribulation to destroy the enemies before the final Jubilee, which we would call the 15th year, which is the final after the 7 sevens. Then you have the final Jubilee. Well, these 14 years are the final 2 sevens of the 7 times 7. All right? And you're going to say, how is this possible? How did we not understand this before? And that's when you come into the big teaching. These are just intro teachings. And these intros, you will find deeper, detailed videos about them as you go further in after you begin to understand. This one is a big one at 2 hours and 43 minutes because it's going to help you to understand it's all because of Matthew. The reason these things hadn't been understood is, number one, it wasn't yet time. But number two, is because we have all foundationally been taught from the Gospel of Matthew for centuries. Generation after generation, the foundation has always been in the Gospel of Matthew. And because of that, whenever somebody goes to read prophecy, they always look through the lens of Matthew, thinking that it belongs to Matthew's portion, because they haven't understood who Mark speaks to and they haven't understood who Luke speaks to. I promise you, this intro series will blow your mind and open the revelation to you as you have never, ever understood before. Things will begin to explode in your understanding everywhere, from the beginning of creation to the end of Revelation. I promise you. So with that, let's get started, because this one is really exciting. When our brother Jake had shared this, I was like, okay, I made a little note about it, and I've got so many notes to things to look into, and where I want to go, and things I want to rehash that we haven't talked about in a long time, because I know we can go in much deeper detail. And then something like this pops up, kind of like what our brother Peter did with the last one. Something like this pops up, and I think, well, you know what? Let me have a closer look at that. Let's see how detailed, because Jake gave some pretty good points. And so I thought, okay, let's go in much more detail. Let's really have a look at this. And I was laughing. Like, I was literally giggling this afternoon as I was planning out the tabs for today's teaching. I was giggling because I couldn't believe how perfectly aligned it was. It's so perfectly aligned, in fact, that when we get to chapters 5, 6, and 7, as I said earlier, it opens each one of them with a feast. And the first one is a mystery. And if you guys know, if you've been around for a little bit, like I said, this one isn't for the beginners. This one is for those who have been around for a bit and understand that there are 3 feasts where you can't come empty-handed to the Lord. All right? Well, when you see this and how these chapters open, it just, I chuckled because it was so perfect. It was so perfect right from the opening first one or two verses. All right? So with that, I'm going to start right here in Hebrews 11 to give you this little glimpse, a reminder of something we've shared on numerous times. We have Enoch, which is this prophetic picture of the pre-trib. Then we've got the 40 days, which is when the Lord comes as the days of Noah for 40 days. This isn't the days of Noah from Matthew 24. This is the days of Noah from Luke 17, when he's coming for 40 days to fulfill, as the white horse rider, to fulfill what he said he would in Luke 11, to be as Jonah was, a warning for 40 days. Okay? So you've got the pre-trib, and we know the events related around the pre-trib. The Lord is going to what? He is going to warn his remnant from the bride, who are going to be chosen to remain from this group, and he will meet with them when he returns after the wedding, which is the beginning of his 40 days as the 40 days of Noah. So for those of you who have been around for a bit, you know this one. This is the prophetic picture at the end of Seals, when the foundations had been laid in the midst of Seals, and so he's looking for a city that has foundations, and we know this is when he returns with heavenly Mount Zion, with paradise, with the place prepared to receive the mid-trib great multitude, which is Abraham, that his seed would be as the sand of the sea, right? And then, of course, we have the story with Sarah, and she delivered a child, which was the child of promise, which is, of course, Isaac, is the prophetic picture of when the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. We showed that picture and have talked about it numerous times in the story from Genesis 16, 17, and 21. Abraham was one kid that he wasn't supposed to have, Ishmael, when he's 86 years old. Then it's 13 years, and Ishmael's 13, and the Lord makes a covenant with him after 13 years, and bang, the 14th year, Isaac is born, and Abraham is now 100. You know, it's an exact picture when he's born, when the Lord returns, feet down, the time of the promise, feet down on the Mount of Olives at the 14th year. So this is what we're going to be looking at. This is what we're going to recognize within the stories of John 4, but in particular 5, 6, and 7. All right? So let's get started. Let's start with John chapter 4. Now, John chapter 4 is something we've shared in numerous times, right? John chapter 4 is a big deal, and it's something we've talked about quite a bit recently, because John chapter 4 is the same prophetic type picture as Genesis chapter 29, when he has the story of the woman at the well, and he meets Rachel at the well. He has to serve 7 years. We've talked about this, and why is it at the well? Why do we have the mention of her with a water pot? Okay, yes, she's at a well. Yes, she's drawing water. It's the same kind of story in the was with Rachel and Leah. And why the water pot? Because, as we know, it's connected to Reuben, the man with the pitcher of water. It's talking about the timing of Aquarius, when the Lord will do two things. Number one, within the month of Aquarius, the month connected to Reuben, the son of man, the man represented as Reuben in the four beasts around the throne. Okay, the four beasts, or the four cherubim around the throne. The one on the south, which is the beginning, is the man with the pitcher of water. It represents man, and it represents water. We talked about it in the last one, how perfectly fitting that to the south, representing Reuben, was where the water was, and where most likely was where the Acts chapter 2 took place. Okay, it's awesome. And we're seeing the same type of story in John chapter 4. Now, as we go down, we've talked about this before, right? Numerous times. And the question is, when is this? And who is the Lord now talking to here? He's now talking to who? He's talking to his disciples, right? So you had the woman, you had her, she's all excited, she realizes it's the Christ, she leaves her water pot, and we have that prophetic picture, this bride time that's about to come. And what does he say in John chapter 4, verse 35. He says, say ye not, there are yet 4 months, then comes harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. Okay, so what is he saying? He's saying something of a harvest is going to take place 4 months earlier. Okay, 4 months earlier. And it says, and he that reaps receives wages, and gathereth fruit unto eternal life, that both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. And herein is that saying true, one soweth and another reapeth. I sent you to reap that whereon you bestowed no labor, other men labored, and you are entered into their labors. Okay, so what do we know about this? We know that the Lord, in Luke chapter 12, we have this great picture of these 3 watches that we've often talked about. You have that remnant group from the bride that's about to be taken, and we see it right here. He tells them in Luke 12, verse 35, let your loins be girded about and your lights burning, and you yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord when he return from the wedding, that when he returns and knocks, they may open unto him immediately. Blessed are those servants whom when the Lord comes shall find watching. Verily I say unto you, that he shall gird himself and make them to sit down to meat, and he will come forth and serve them. This is the banquet meal that he's going to have with this remnant servant group who were a part of the bride, but had been prepared for the end to serve the Lord. And this is him letting them know, as we've shared in the past, letting them know in advance. Now, what does that mean in advance? I think probably the day of the pre-trib, like maybe moments or minutes or hours, I don't know. But it is a very short period of time where the Lord or the angel of the Lord is letting that first remnant group know to be ready, to be girded about. We showed this in the last one, this being girded about, being connected to Elijah, right? When he was girded, it was incredible to see all those connections. Well, this one, we know that he's saying when their Lord will return from the wedding, which means he hasn't yet taken the pre-trib bride, but he's about to, and he's telling them to be ready when he returns. We know that this group, to be ready when he returns, is the same group that we've talked about from Luke 24. When he returns to begin his 40 days, which is after the 7-day wedding, he returns on the 8th day. He has this banquet, he gathers them together, and he has this banquet meal with them. We see this also spoken of, which we've covered numerous times in Luke chapter 14. You have the wedding, and then you have the banquet meal when he returns, which is based on those who will take part in the resurrection of the dead. Okay? So we see this here. We know that he only has the meal that he sits with and serves and eats with them in Luke chapter 24 as well. So we've understood this group and we've talked about them numerous times. Well, this is the same group that is connected, as we've talked about numerous times, in John chapter 4, which means, who are they? We know that they're a part of winter wheat, right? Remember what we've shared on winter wheat? Winter wheat is planted in the fall. It takes root before Passover, obviously, and it's harvested at around very late spring, early summer, which is very different than spring wheat, which we'll just touch on in a bit later. But do you know what happens with winter wheat? There's 2 ways winter wheat can take place, can be used. One is as a cash crop. Look at this. A cash crop, also called profit crop. Remember the Lord? Remember? He's paid the price, right? He's already paid the price for them. This is representing that pre-trib group. But from among that pre-trib group, as we just saw there, there's a remnant that will be remaining to serve the Lord. And that group is going to put their necks on the line during the time of seals to help save and bring in this great multitude during the time of seals. Okay? Because the great multitude will come in when the Lord comes on heavenly Mount Zion with paradise at the end of the 6th year of seals, and they'll come in within that 7th year. So what is this portion of winter wheat also called? Well, the majority are going to be the cash crop, but from among them, there's going to be a portion called the cover crop. And the cover crop isn't used for profit, except it's used to cut down, to kill it so that it dies and lays on the earth, so that an abundance of the earth, the soil gets much more rich, and it brings up much more in the next crop that follows. It's absolutely awesome. All right? It is a direct prophetic picture of the winter wheat, this pre-trib bride, and the portion from among them that will remain to be his cover crop to help bring in this great multitude. So when we're looking here at John chapter 4, who's he speaking to? He's speaking, as I believe it here, he's speaking not as a after the pre-trib. He's speaking as if this group pre-trib. Okay? He's speaking to them as this as this Luke 12, verse 35, 36, 37. Okay? He's letting them know when he returns from the wedding to be ready. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to be the ones going out and reaping in places that they never sown. They're going to be doing it when he returns from the wedding, which is going to be 4 months early from what? 4 months early from when the harvest would start. But also, what is this? It's the time of his birth, right? The time of Jesus's birth. So if we go to Jesus's birth, which is, here we're in 2026 here, Sivan 15 is the time of Jesus's birth, okay? Which would be the Feast of Weeks. So this is Jesus's birth. If we go back 4 months, it brings us to the New Year of Trees, which is why, of course, in chapter 4, he's saying the fields are already white and ready to harvest, because he's talking about the New Year of Trees. If you go back 4 months from any other place, you're not going to get to a place where the fields are already white, and the reason they're white is from the almond blossoms, right? From the almond blossoms, and all of the almond blossoms start falling and the ground gets covered white. This is what he's talking about. But what do we know about this? This isn't the pre-trib. Because when Christ returns as the white horse rider after the wedding on the 8th day, excuse me, after the wedding on the 8th day, he's not coming for the pre-trib. He's already taken the pre-trib. He's coming at the time of the wedding, after the end of the wedding, which is connected, as we know, Luke in order. Remember, Luke in order is very much like the story of Hebrews that we showed, with the pre-trib, the 40 days, which is pre-trib is chapter 1, right? The John the Baptist type, those who are already in Christ and spirit filled. And then you have the 8th day, and then after the 8th day, you go to chapter 2, and Christ is born in chapter 2, the representation of the 40 days of Noah. Then you have him returning in chapter 3, which is like at the end of seals. And then we talked about chapter 4, which is when he returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives. Satan had been loosed. Everything had been given to Satan. And now he's coming to tempt Christ, and then Christ defeats him. Okay? It's the same picture that we've shared in Luke in order, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're looking for the time of Jesus's birth and when he would come to begin his 40 days. Well, when is it? If he was born at the true Feast of Weeks on the 3rd month, 15th day, if we go back 4 months, we end up at the New Year of Trees, which is the timing of all of the fields and everything being white. So what has happened? The pre-trib was taken, depending where you are in the world, what side of the world you're on. The Lord returns, depending where you are on earth, returning on the 8th day, after the 7-day wedding, and he's telling them what? Well, he was telling them it's going to be happening for you 4 months early. Okay? So that's what we're seeing here, is this 4 months early, and the sowing and the reaping that this remnant worker group is going to do. So like I said, this is just a glimpse, but we have to remember this right here, is 4 months from the birth of Christ. And if the birth of Christ is the prophetic picture of his 40 days, as we've talked about numerous times from Isaiah chapter 9, from Luke chapter 2, right? And now we know from John 4 it's being observed 4 months early. This is when he returns, has that banquet meal with them, and then they're going to go out and work. So John chapter 4 we're not going really in depth. It's not this huge picture, but what are we seeing in this? There's this picture, this typology of the Samaritan woman, okay, this Enoch, this pre-trib group, and there's a remnant that are there, and they're going to be serving the Lord at the time 4 months early from where the harvest should take place. It's going to be 4 months early, and they're going to start to serve him. Now, remember this, because in Luke, let's go to this right now. In Luke chapter 17, we see this exact same storyline with the bride, don't we? We see it with this in Samaria, right? With the 10 lepers. What is the picture of the pre-trib? The pre-trib is a picture of 10% of the harvest. Those who are in Christ, spirit-filled, the first fruits. And from among them, there is a first fruits remaining to serve the Lord. And what do we see? He passed through the midst of Samaria. There were 10 men. And one of them, so all 10 got cleansed, right? And one of them, when he saw that he was clean, that healed, he turned back and with a loud voice glorified God. And he fell down on his face at his feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. Jesus answering said, were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? There are not found that return to give glory to God, save this stranger. Stranger is like Gentile, right? This Samaritan, the Gentiles that are grafted in with the house of Israel. You see that? So what do we end up seeing? It's the same picture of 1 out of 10. The Samaritan is the one who returned to give glory to the Lord. And this is what we're seeing. We have this one. She's going to be considered as that bride. And just before it happens, he's warning them that 4 months early, I'm coming, and this is when you're going to start working. Now, why is this important? Well, because we've come to understand the 3 key feasts where they're not to be empty-handed, right? We know that there's the feast of unleavened bread, which is the Passover, which is 7 days. We know that there's the Feast of Weeks, which is 1 day. And we know that there is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is 7 days, which is the revelation of the end of days, 7-1-7. And then, of course, there is the 8th day of Tabernacles, which is the new beginning, the Jubilee. And we'll touch on that later. But what have we been sharing over the past few years in this revelation? This picture here in Deuteronomy is the revelation of the end of days. We've talked about it numerous times over the last couple of years. The pre-trib, though, isn't the first feast. The pre-trib, the mid-trib is related to the first feast. The post-trib is related to the third feast. And the pre-trib is the one that's related to the middle feast. You see, this middle feast being the Feast of Weeks, the Lord's telling them what? 4 months earlier. Which means, even though this is the middle one, the Lord is revealing to us that it's going to be first. It's going to be the one that comes first, which is exactly what we show. It's going to be what comes first. So you've got your pre-trib connection, his returning at that time. He's here for 40 days. It goes to the next 3 days, and then what? Then you've got your beginning of your 7 years of seals, which will play out as 6 years. And then the 7th year, the Lord is here, and in the midst of that 7th year, the mid-trib great multitude rapture happens. So what do we know about this? It's the 6th year, right? 6 days as 6 years. And on the seventh day, that seventh year, is the solemn assembly, which is the prophetic picture of the mid-trib great multitude rapture. But the pre-trib is the one connected to the Feast of Weeks, is the one connected to the Feast of Weeks and when he returns, and they're going to serve him and they're going to work during these 6 days as 6 years to bring in the solemn assembly great multitude of the mid-trib. Which means what? The one is going to come before the 7 and 7. He's moved it forward by 4 months. So it would play out really not as 717 as it would play out in a typical year, but it will become 177. And we saw this even by going back to the revelation of Genesis chapter 1. What do we know about the word beginning? This word in the beginning is Christ. So it's in Christ, God the Father created the heaven and the earth. So who created it all? Jesus did. The Father gave it to him to go and create. Right? So we've talked on this many times. We know the beginning is Christ. Christ is called what? The beginning and the end. Well, what was the beginning? If he's called the beginning and the end, what is the definition of beginning? Taurus. Taurus. The beginning is Taurus. And when is Taurus? Taurus, brothers and sisters, is the month of Sivan, the third month of the Hebrew calendar, which he has then said is going to happen 4 months early, which is going to put what? Which is going to put the thing that happens at the Feast of Weeks in Taurus 4 months earlier. And when he moved that 4 months earlier in that mystery, it puts it before Abib, the first month, which is Nisan on the Hebrew calendar, and before the Passover. So it becomes 177. It's absolutely wild. I mean, we can spend hours, as we've done on the past, just proving the rest of this out. Because if the beginning is Taurus, and that was Christ in the beginning, well, then there should be what? 6 and then the seventh day as 6 and 7 years of seals. And isn't that exactly what we have in the creation story of days? And then you've got the millenniums from Adam, and it's 7,000, right? It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. So there's something very important to understand here because the first feast that's going to be observed is the Feast of Weeks, right? We've known this now for a long time. We've shown how Reuben proves it out because Reuben is the month of Aquarius, where these events will happen, which is directly related to the south and the tribe that's the head of the south, which is those around the throne, and the one to the south is the face of a man. Okay? We know that this is the time frame in whatever year it's going to happen, though we are very believing and hopeful and prayerful that this is the year in the understanding of everything that we've shared on in the past. Which means Feast of Weeks moves 4 months early. Okay? Now, that means if the Lord is coming as the white horse rider from the Feast of Weeks, but 4 months earlier to his remnant group who were waiting for him when he returned from the wedding, if we now go to the next chapter in the Gospel of John, we should see a feast, right? How many feasts? I want you guys to remember this as we go through this, because when we get to each chapter, 5, 6, and 7, I want you to recall there is the Feast of Weeks, there is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the Passover, and there is the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? The Feast of Tabernacles is the third one. So remember, there's a reason I'm telling you this. In order in a year, it goes 7 of Passover, which is the unleavened bread. It goes the 1 of the Feast of Weeks, and it goes the 7 of Tabernacles. But isn't it interesting that over the past couple or so years, we've been able to show that the middle one of the Feast of Weeks is the thing that's going to happen first, which is why in previous years we were looking for the Feast of Weeks before the Feast of Trumpets. But it didn't make sense because it had to be before the New Year, which is at Nisan. And over the past, year and a half, 2 years since we discovered this, we know that the only way the Feast of Weeks can come before the Passover is if the Lord gave us some sort of clue. And that was exactly what he gave us in this mystery in John chapter 4 that would have had the apostles or the disciples scratching their heads and just saying, all right, I ain't going to ask him. There's no way they understood what he was really talking about because it was prophecy. It was for us. It was for people being prepared at the time of the end. So if we now go and the pre-trib has happened, he's told them when he returns, it would be as it was right here. It would be 4 months early. It'd be the time that they're going to go out and serve him to bring in this harvest. They're going to be serving to bring in who? The great multitude. Hello. They're going to be serving to bring in the great multitude. And we'll touch on this. You're going to see it. Okay? But you've known. This is so exciting. I'm harping on this for a purpose. You have known now for a while that the Feast of Weeks is going to be observed 4 months earlier. The pre-trib is going to happen, and the Lord is coming at this point to begin his 40 days, and that will begin his 40 days connected to the Feast of Weeks, and then it's 6 to the 7 as Passover unleavened bread, and then it's 7 and then to the 8th as tabernacles. So let's go to John chapter 5 and see how it starts. Look at this. Isn't that crazy? You might say, well, we don't know what feast it is. Exactly. Do you know many times that happens in Scripture? Watch this. You want to know why this feast seems to be so mysterious? And I'm telling you, what we're looking at is we are looking at 4, 5, 6, and 7 through the prophetic lens that has been revealed to the end of days. This prophetic lens that we know is about this pre and a remnant group, and then when he returns for 40 days, and then when he returns at the end of seals, and when he returns at the end of trumpets. Okay? That is the lens we're looking through all of this revelation that we've understood over these years. It's the same story replaying, and we have another fractal within these chapters. Now, why is it just say a feast of the Jews? Could it be relating that he's talking in the next chapter, and it's going to be the feast of Passover? No, I think there's time passing between them all. Because look at what it says. Verse 5, John chapter 5. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Okay? And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Wasn't that amazing? Isn't that what we know? Jesus is coming to begin his 40 days. He's going to go to Jerusalem, and it's going to be connected to this feast. Which feast? Well, there's only one feast, really, out of the 3 main feasts of the Lord. Is there not only one? So out of Passover, which is the 7 days of Passover, and out of the Feast of Weeks, and out of Tabernacles, which one is the mystery? Well, let me show you. In Leviticus chapter 23, it says, these are the feasts of the Lord and holy convocations. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. On the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. Okay? Is this a mystery as to when this is? No. Starts on the 14th day, okay, at evening, and the 15th through to 7 days from the evening of the 14th, and it goes through for 7 days. When does it start? 14th day at evening of the first month. That's not hard to figure out. What's the other feast of the Lord? Well, the other one is the Feast of Booths, or the Feast of Tabernacles. When does the Feast of Tabernacles take place? It takes place on the 15th day of the 7th month for 7 days. And then, of course, there's the 8th day, which is the solemn assembly after. Okay, so what do we see? It's the 15th day of the 7th month, and it lasts for 7 days before the 8th day. Do we know when? Yes, 7th month, 15th day. What about the first? For Passover, right? The week of Passover. What is it? It's the first month, 14th day at evening for 7 days. Okay. What about Feast of Weeks? Is there a date given? Is there a timing given? And you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto the morrow after the 7 Sabbaths shall you number or count another 50 days. And you shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord. When does it start? What month? What month? Why isn't there a description like the other two? I say there's no description for the exact same reason we're seeing it in John chapter 5. In John chapter 5, all we're seeing is there was a feast of the Jews and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Isn't that crazy? Remember, why is this crazy? Because you're going to remember as we go forward that there still has to be 2 other feasts that relate to chapter 6 and another feast that relates to chapter 7, and both of them need to be 7 days and 7 days, and the last one needs to go to the 8th day so that all 3 of them are covered. And this one here, not being described, is like the one that's not being given a time frame or being described in its time in the 3 that are to the Lord. Isn't that wild? Because what are we looking here now? We're looking at this as Luke's gospel in his discourse. This to us is like reading the discourse in Luke, which is the beginning of the 40 days now of the Son of Man. He is now returned on the 15th day of the 11th month because it's 4 months earlier. And he's here now for 40 days before the 14 years begin. Well, look at what it says next. John 5, verse 3. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. Now you might say, why is the great multitude being mentioned in John chapter 5 of all places when it's not related? When it's not related to the mid-trib great multitude rapture. The mid-trib great multitude rapture should be related to the end of seals. Well, it is. Do you want to know why it's mentioned here? Because in John chapter 4, he told these guys that they're going to be going out to what? To work, to harvest these fields. That they didn't put the labor in, but they're going to go in to bring them in to the great multitude harvest. And I'm going to prove it to you another way. Okay? Why is a great multitude now being mentioned? Okay? The pre-trib has happened. The Lord has had his banquet meal with his remnant group. His remnant are now with him. The Lord is warning at this feast. He's here now 4 months early from that feast. And all of a sudden there's a mention of a great multitude right away. Do you know the reason for that mention of the great multitude? It's given to us in Luke chapter 5. Do you guys know that Luke, my savings that I did on it didn't stay very well, so I'm going to go back into eSword. Do you know why Luke chapter 5 is so important? Because Luke chapter 5 is the beginning of the 40 days, is another prophetic type picture that we've shared in the past about the Lord remnant, 40 days coming and will serve the Lord. And isn't it interesting that in Luke 5:2 he says he saw two ships standing by the lake, right? Talking about their nets, and there was two of them. Isn't that funny? I find that not just funny, I find it awesome, because every time we've talked on this and how it begins with the two worker groups, it's always two of them. Remember Luke 24, right? The Moses and Elijah company. It's always related to two of them. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Two of them in relation to the ships, the two boats that they're in. It reminds me of a dream or vision that our brother Ivan from excuse me, from he's in Africa. Where is it? South Africa. Had told us years ago, where he had this dream or this vision, and it was two buses of these worker groups. It was very, very interesting, and we see this everywhere. We've talked about it numerous times. Two portions, two groups, or sorry, two groups in this portion of workers during seals. Okay? And then, what do we see? He says, launch out into the deep. So this is like the Lord being with them. Remember, when the Lord comes and he's meeting with them at the start of the 40 days, he meets with the two of them. Okay, that's the typology that we're seeing in Luke 5. He's now gathering them to him, and there's the two. And then we know that he has what? He has that banquet meal with them when he returns on the 8th day after the 40, when the 40 days are about to begin after the wedding. And then what does he do? Then he's going to open their understanding to them, that they might understand the scriptures. This is the only group where we read this happening. It's not in Luke or it's not in Mark or in Matthew either. Okay? And so what are we seeing here in Luke chapter 5? He tells them, launch into the deep. So let me just give you a little example of this launching into the deep. I know we're talking about great multitude. You'll see it in a second. You see that in Matthew and in Mark, this deepness that's being spoken about, or this depth, is about the planting in the earth. They didn't have any depth. There was no depthness of earth. There was no depth of earth. Okay? This is all about the sowing and reaping. But when we get into Luke chapter 5, it has nothing to do with the depth of the soil or the non-depth of the soil. It's all about the depth of letting their nets in to bring up just this multitude of fish for them, right? What do you think that is? Because one of the meanings is the deep things of God. What's this group being given? They're being given the deep things of God. They're the ones that he's having this meal with them. He's opening up their understanding. And then what's going to happen? The Lord is going to begin to start doing miracles. He's going to be doing miracles. He's going to be raising people from the dead. He's not just going to be walking around humdrum, hey guys, we need to go over here and pray for these people. No, he's going to be doing many miracles while he's here for 40 days. But he's not running around saying, I am the Christ, come to me. It's not like that. Okay? He's coming as the prophet. And then look what happens. So he opens up their understanding, this depth of understanding, which is why we're seeing it in Luke and not in the others. And then listen to what he says next in verse 6 of Luke 5. And when they had done this, they enclosed look at that, a great multitude of fishes, and their net brake. And they beckoned unto their partners, which were in the other ship. See, remember there were two, that they should come and help them. And they came and filled both ships, so that they began to sink. Verse 10, what does he tell them? And so was also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, which were partners with Simon. And Jesus said unto Simon, fear not, from henceforth thou shalt catch men. So right as he comes to this remnant worker group, when he's here for 40 days and he has this meal and he opens up their understanding, what is he going to do? There's two groups, right? Two boats. And what's he going to do? Tell them, this great multitude of fish you caught. Do you guys realize that's only in Luke's gospel? Do you realize that? We haven't taught on that for years. Okay? The great multitude is only spoken about in Luke's gospel, and it was a great multitude of fish. But what does he tell them? From here on forward, you're going to be catching men. And what men do you think they're going to be catching? The great multitude. So the reason that John in chapter 5 is talking about this feast when the Lord is in Jerusalem, which is this type of mystery feast, which is the Feast of Weeks, but it's being observed 4 months earlier, and he's here for 40 days. He's what? Suddenly, there's this great multitude of all of these impotent folk, but what are they doing? They're not all running to see him. They're waiting for the moving of the waters. Okay? They're waiting for this moving of the water. What is this moving of the water? We'll come back to Luke chapter 5, Luke 5 in a second. What is this moving of the water? You could almost kind of consider it like Pentecost, if you will. Okay? They're waiting for this healing to come about. And it says in verse 4 of John 5, and the angel went down, for an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first after the troubling of the water stepped in was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. Was it the time of the troubling of the water? No. They were there waiting for the troubling of the water. They were waiting for it to happen. This great multitude, all there waiting for the troubling of the water. A great multitude waiting for the troubling of the water. Do you know what this word for troubling of the water is? This disturbance of water, which is a roiling. It's only used 2 times. Something we haven't shared on in a long time, but for those who have been around for a while, you'll remember it. This troubling of the water, brothers and sisters, is only used one other time, and it's in Mark chapter 13, verse 8. Why is that important? Because this roiling, this troubling of the water right here is not because it has happened yet, but there is a great multitude waiting for it. And what's the connection to the great multitude? Mark's group, right? The sleepy church that was left behind, right? The mid-trib that will come in as the great multitude. Here he is now. The pre-trib has happened. The 40 days have started. And you've got a great multitude waiting for the tribulation, waiting for this roiling of the water. And the only other place where this roiling of water, this troubling of water happens is right here in what's called the beginning of tribulation, the beginning of sorrows, in Mark chapter 13, verse 8. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in diverse places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. The beginnings of sorrows. The troubling of the water that will take place for the great multitude. It's right there. It's right there. Playing out in order. The mystery feast 4 months early. A great multitude waiting for the troubling of the water. It's awesome. It's incredible how it plays out. Now, if we go back, I want to bring this up real quick because if we go back into Luke chapter 5 and just follow a little bit of the story, look what happens. Okay? We had the 2 ships, that 2 remnant group. We got them catching a multitude of fish, and this multitude of fish is a prophetic picture, they're told, that they're going to do this for this catching of men. Okay? From henceforth, thou shalt catch men. Let me light that up. Okay? This is what that story was for, and who do they represent? The remnant group who will work seals for this catching of men. Okay? And they forsook all and followed him. If we follow the story, we see more of the great multitude, and what do we see? We see a bunch of healing that takes place. Now the Lord is going from place to place teaching, but it's healing and healing. Everywhere it's taking place, he's talking about healing. And they're all amazed in Luke 5:26. It says, and they were all amazed, and they glorified God, and they were filled with fear, saying, we have seen strange things today. Then he calls Levi, and what do we see? A great feast. This might even be that representation of that great feast, right? He meets with them. He says, you're going to come and you're going to serve me. You're going to go be fishers of men. They leave everything, right? It's that remnant picture. And then what does he have? He makes a great feast for them. And then the Pharisees and all these guys are complaining that the publicans, the sinners are with them, right? The Gentiles, they would say. And then watch what happens. Watch what happens. We have the story in Luke 5, verse 37, 38, 39 of the new wine. Do you recall that? We just did a teaching on this not long ago. It never even dawned on me. Whoops, that's the wrong one. It never even dawned on me that, one sec. If it'll pause, it hadn't even dawned on me that was at the bottom of this right here, this new skins, right? It was exciting to see what ends up happening towards the end of Luke chapter 5 because we know the timing of this in Luke. We know it's connected to that remnant group, the old, who will then receive the new because they won't be able to go out with new revelation, all this new understanding, with this anointing, without this anointing that's coming by the Holy Ghost. Okay, you can go watch that teaching, New Skins. So it's so fitting that it's at the end of Luke chapter 5 as well. All of these things are playing out in order. So again, this mystery feast, a great multitude waiting for the troubling of water, right? it's everything is there. Okay, let's keep going. Remember I said the miracles. We see this in Luke chapter 5 as well. And this one who do you want to be made whole? Right? It's the one rise and take up your bed. Immediately the man was made whole, and he took up his bed and walked, and on the same day was a Sabbath. He tells him in verse 14, after Jesus findeth him in the temple, he said unto him, behold, thou art made whole, sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee. We've seen that same thing in John chapter 8, right? Go and sin no more. And then you have the light of the world, the light of the Lord. What else do we have? The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus that made him whole. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. It's about his authority in verse 19. Verily, verily, remember, this is only during the 40 days. So we know he's in Jerusalem. We know that there's the multitude that are waiting for the tribulation, the roilings of the waters. We know that the reason for the multitude being mentioned there is because it's a picture even of the remnant who will go out and bring in this great multitude. And so Jesus is there telling them, warning them of things that are coming. And he says, verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son of Man can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth, the Father do. For the Father loveth the Son, and showeth him all things that himself doeth. And he will show him greater works than these, that you may marvel. For as the Father raiseth up the dead, and quickeneth them, even so the Son quickeneth whom he will. Now remember, even in these 40 days, the Lord will quicken people as well. There will be these raising of the dead while he's here for 40 days. It's not going to be any Mickey Mouse miracles and healings while the Lord is here. But many won't believe. They're going to think he's just a deceiver or something, right? But wait until you see where the conversation of a deceiver about him comes. They're going to think that he's a deceiver at a certain point, and where it's mentioned is incredible. Okay, so he is giving insight. He is going to be doing these types of miracles. Verse 22, for For the Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto his Son, unto the Son, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honoreth not the Son honoreth not the Father which hath sent him. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent him hath everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. Remember this conversation? So he's telling them this prophetically in this picture during the 40 days. The pre-trib has already happened. Remember that? So what is it about the remnant? What is it about those who are of the great multitude, the church that remains? Why didn't they go pre-trib? Well, because they weren't in Christ spirit-filled, but they claimed the name of Jesus. You see? Those who claim the name of Jesus but are still caught up in things of the world and not diligent, watching and praying, they're going to remain, but their portion will be in paradise. But their portion won't be the pre-trib in the third heaven. So what is he saying at this point? Anybody who believes on me, okay, will have everlasting life. All you have to do is believe. What about diligently seeking and searching? What about watching and praying? These aren't things that I say. These are things that the scriptures say, right? Enoch was worthy because he believed, he had faith, right? Which is what he's telling them here. They have faith. But he was also diligently seeking the Lord, believing that he was a rewarder of them that diligently sought him. You see? It wasn't just a belief, okay? But we know during seals, it is just a straightforward belief in the Lord. They go to paradise. For the Father is given unto him. Witness, yet another. Da, 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 da. He tells them in verse 39, search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. Okay? Verse 43. I am come in my Father's name. Listen to this. He's now warning them of somebody else who's coming. I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you shall receive. Remember this? Again, we can go back to what I mentioned earlier in Luke 17. We see it in the exact same context of what we were talking about and what we've taught on for years. We know verse 24, it's when he comes as lightning from one end to the other in his day. But first, okay, this is the Luke 21 verse 12. But first, but before these, meaning during the time of the 40 days of the white horse rider, before the red horse rider, and the 14 years begin, it says, but first must he suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. See that? When is this conversation? During his 40 days. This is the picture of the 40 days of him being as Jonah was for 40 days warning, right? As the 40 days of Noah. And he's saying it right here. He's confirming it right here. And you receive me not. He's being rejected, just like he said. And if another shall come in his own name, him you shall receive. Wasn't that exactly right? Many of them will receive him, because when the beast comes, many will accept the beast. Far more will accept the beast than will come to Christ, as we know. You see? How can you believe which receive honor one another, and seek not the honor that cometh from God only? Do not think, excuse me, do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is only one that accuses you. Okay? So, again, there's details in here, but is it really crazy, in-depth details? No. Why? Because it only represents the 40 days. It's only the 40 days. It's only when he returns at the feast, which is the Feast of Weeks 4 months earlier, connected to his birthday, when he's here for 40 days, which is a great multitude that's there waiting for the troubling of the waters, which is directly connected to the beginning of Mark's discourse. He's there warning them. He's doing healings. Okay? The Jews aren't believing in him. Many others aren't believing in him. And he says, you don't want to believe in me, but you're going to believe in the one who's going to come, or in one who's going to come in his own name. You're going to believe in him, but you're going to reject me, who says, I'm coming in my Father's name, not my own. These are the things of the 40 days. Directly connected to the events of things that we have understood over the years, which are the 40 days. So, now what comes next? If the first one was the Feast of Weeks, but 4 months earlier, well then, we know it's not 717, but the 1 gets moved to before the first 7, and then it goes 7 of unleavened bread Passover, and 7 of tabernacles, which means the next thing that should be connected to his second coming, quote unquote, not the end time coming like the world thinks, but his second time coming, which is at the end of 6 years of seals to that 7th year of seals, we've taught on numerous times, is directly connected to the 6 days as years of unleavened bread as seals, and the 7th day as the solemn assembly, being the 7th year of seals, which is a solemn assembly. You know what's interesting about it? You're going to want to check this, remember this a little bit later, because you notice how it's 6 days, and the 7th is the solemn assembly? 6, and then the 7th is the solemn assembly? That means the 7th day is always what? It's always the rest. Right? The 7th day is the rest, or the 7th year of seals would be the 7th year of rest. But there is no rest. Okay? Well, it is a rest. There's no more battling and fighting and so forth, but it's considered as a Sabbath, right? It's a solemn day. Thou shalt do no work therein. This is going to be key for something that you're going to see talked about when we get into, I think by the 7th chapter, when you see why they're upset with the Lord. Because it's 6 days as 6 years of seals. The Lord comes, and then the 7th year, in that 7th year of seals, which is the picture of that 7th day, is the solemn assembly, is the mid-trib great multitude rapture. When do we know this great multitude rapture happens? Passover, right? First or second Passover. Because the first Passover has been fulfilled, it's most likely second Passover. But the point is that it's Passover. Okay? We know that it's Passover. So there are 6 days or 6 years, and the 7th is rest. But is the Lord actually resting on that 7th day / 7th year of seals? No, he's bringing in people, right? He's healing and bringing in the great multitude. So there's not really a rest, but he's healing on, right, by restoring the great multitude on a Sabbath day. And you're going to see later on how the Jews are upset at him for it, and why the word kill him is in one of the chapters 4 times, but not in the previous one. It's wild. It's wild. So what are we looking for? We know that seals, okay, the connection to Feast of Weeks, that first feast, this mystery one, that has now taken place. The 40 days of the Lord are done. Now it's going to be the 6 days as 6 years, and the 7th day as the 7th year of seals. And it's all going to be what? We know the great multitude rapture will then come in at the time of Passover in the 7th year. It's all connected to Passover, right? Well, let's see. If John chapter 6 is this prophetic story in order as another fractal, like 5, 6, 7, first one being as a Feast of Weeks mystery one, then the next one should be Passover. Let's see. Let's see. John 6. After these things, Jesus went over to the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. Look at this. And a great multitude followed him. See, the other ones in the previous chapter, they were waiting for the tribulation. They were waiting for the troubling of the water. In this one, they're now following him because they saw his miracles, which he did unto them that were diseased. Okay? So what are we seeing? Now we're seeing the great multitude follow him. Do you remember this? In Mark chapter 9, this is one of those differences in the Gospels from Luke, Mark, Matthew. Mark's after 6 days. Okay? Remember what it says? Mark 9, starting in verse 1. Verily I say unto you, that there be some that stand here, which shall not taste of death, till they have seen, past tense, the kingdom of God come with power. That's because they'll see him come towards the end of the 6th year of seals with heavenly Mount Zion, but the great multitude rapture does not happen yet. Okay? It doesn't happen as soon as he comes. It's several months later, in the midst of the 7th year of seals. We've talked about these 6 days being what? After 6 days, as a picture of after 6 years. We've talked about the fuller and the white. This word for white is only used twice in the New Testament. Once right here in Mark, which is a prophetic picture of the end of seals, and once in Revelation 7 for the great multitude. The fuller is connected to Elijah. I think it's in Malachi chapter 4 when it's talking about him, and it's talking about that time of the Lord's coming. It's so awesome. Okay? And then what do we see? They ask about Elijah. I thought in Mark 9:11, I thought that Elijah must first come. And he says Elijah verily did come first and restored all, verily cometh first and restoreth all things. And then he says in verse 13, but I say unto you that Elijah is indeed come. Okay? Again, something we've taught on. We know that he had already come because he's that remnant group, that group during seals, one of those boats, one of the remnant on the road to Emmaus, right? The Moses and the Elijah company, relating to the Elijah, the John the Baptist types of the end of days as the Elijahs. Some having put their necks on the line, and those who will go up in a whirlwind like Elijah, not having died, because some will be put to death, not all. We see it in Luke 21. We see it in the church of Smyrna, okay, which is directly related to the first worker group. And so then what does he say? We get to verse 14. And when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them. Do you know that this entire conversation is different? You don't find the Elijah story in Luke. You find it in Matthew in a different version. This is the one saying that he did indeed already come because it's the end of seals. And what do we see then? A great multitude. There is no great multitude mentioned in Luke's transfiguration story or in Matthew's transfiguration story. It's only in Mark's. Why is it only in Mark's? Because when he comes at this connected time, there is going to be a great multitude that will make their way to him. Where else do we see it? Here's the Lord coming. Okay? He's coming with heavenly Mount Zion at the end of the 6th year of seals. And then we can go to Revelation what? Go to Revelation chapter 7. And we go to Revelation chapter 7. And it doesn't start with the great multitude. You see the 144,000 are sealed, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then you see, behold, a great multitude. It's awesome, guys. It's so awesome how it all falls in order. Okay? John chapter 6, keep going. Oh, where's another place? Oh, let me show you another one. Let's go to Psalms 24. Remember, Psalms 24, if we go to our chapters to years, Psalms chapter 24 is this very end of the 6th year of seals. They will have seen the Lord come, right? Just as we saw in Mark 9, they will have seen him come with power and glory. And in Psalms 24, what does it say? The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Why? Because it's the time of the fullness of the Gentiles that will come in. And the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. You see, the earth, the world is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, they that dwell therein. Okay? And what does it then say? Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Right? This hill of the Lord is mountain, right? When you click on it in the Strongs, it's the word mountain. So what do we know about this? What do we know? Hold on a second. Here's this great multitude following him. And what does it say? And Jesus went up into a mountain. What? Jesus went up into a mountain? Isn't that exactly something we've understood as well? Jesus goes up into a mountain because he's coming with what? He's coming with paradise. The first group went up into the third heaven. The second one gets paradise. You guys will remember this from one of the Apocryphas, right? Fragment 5. It confirms 2 Corinthians chapter 12. But that there is this distinction between the habitation of those who produce 100-fold and that of those who produce 60-fold and that of those who produce 30-fold. For the first will be taken into the heavens. The second class will dwell in paradise. And the last will inhabit the city. Okay? This is pre, mid, post. This is that second group. He's coming for the was caught up, the great multitude who will be going to paradise, just as he said what? In John chapter 14. John chapter 14 is what? The exact same in our chapters to years revelation, equal to the 7th year of seals, where he said, I go and prepare a place in my Father's house. If it were not so, I would have told you. If I go and prepare a place, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. So what are we seeing? The great multitude followed him. He's going into a mountain. Why? Because he has come with heavenly Mount Zion. Hello. And then what does it say? And the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was nigh. What? Isn't that just blows my mind. It blows my mind because it's exactly what we've been talking about. Exactly what we've been talking about. You have your offset by the 6 months, but we've got our 6 years to the 7th. And what do we know? In the midst of the 7th year is this timing of the great multitude rapture, which is going to happen at what? It's going to happen in the springtime at Passover. This is something we've shared on numerous times. And lo and behold, the second one is connected to Passover, the week of Passover. We've even shown, if you recall, which I'm sure you do, how these 7 years are prophetically tied to the 7 days of unleavened bread. And that the 7 years of trumpets is directly tied to the 7 days of tabernacles, to the 8th day, which is the Jubilee. We have teachings on this. And here we find chapter 5 to this mystery one. And then we have the second one being Passover. And he's in a high mountain. And there's a great multitude following him. And it's the time of Passover. It's awesome. It's awesome. You see, what do we know about this? For those that have been around for a little while, you'll remember this. We talked earlier about winter wheat. Winter wheat is tied to those pre-trib and the remnant group. But the mid-trib, as we have taught on for years, the mid-trib is connected to spring wheat. Spring wheat is planted in the spring. And it gets planted after Passover, or even if it's a few days before, depending on the year, it doesn't have time to take root before Passover, which means they can't use it when it's harvested in the fall. So it's planted in the spring, takes root after Passover, and when the harvest comes, it's in the fall, not in late spring, early summer, which is the time of the Feast of Weeks for the pre-trib. The difference between winter wheat and spring wheat is the winter wheat is the older, that is like Leah, that goes first. And the spring wheat is the younger, like Rachel, that goes later. The older, the firstborn, before the younger. Exactly like the two wheats. Now listen to this. Among the 630 biblical commandments, we find an admonition not to eat new grain from the new harvest. Now, this new harvest has nothing to do with it just being a harvest that came in. It's about the representation of new wheat. Okay? It says that they're not to eat the grain from the new harvest until the second day of Passover. The time that the barley sacrificed, called the omer, was brought to the temple, the prohibited grain is called kadosh, which literally means new. Okay, so kadosh. Why is this important? Because spring wheat, which is planted in the spring, is harvested in the fall. But when it's harvested in the fall, because it was planted after Passover, it didn't take root until after Passover. When it's harvested in the fall, they cannot eat that grain. Okay? They cannot eat that wheat. And so what do? It has to be carried around all the way until the following year, or I guess it would be later that year. It would be the following year. In the following year, on the second day of Passover. So, for example, if we were in, let's go back to 2025. In 2025, around late April-ish, maybe sometime in April, they're planting the spring wheat. It takes root after Passover. It's not ready to harvest until around the fall, okay? Very late summer here, late September into October. But they cannot eat it or use it for any purposes until the second day of Passover. That is called spring wheat. Okay? That is called kadosh, which means new, and they can't use it until it translates into old, which it becomes old once they get to the second day of Passover. Okay? That's how it works. So what we see here is winter wheat, for example, in the United States, planted in the fall and harvested in early summer. Since these varieties were planted and had not taken root, and had taken root before Passover, they are always yoshon, which means what? Old. It's old. It doesn't mean it's rotten. It just means it's old. They are called yoshon, and they are the winter crop because they were planted and took root before Passover. That's what's going on. So it's the difference between winter wheat and spring wheat. So it's absolutely unequivocally fitting that the ones we've been talking about being represented as spring wheat that are harvested in the fall. Remember what happens? When is the Lord returning? He's returning at what? This end of the 6th year time frame. And then it's going to be what? Mark's discourse also says the day and hour no one knows. So you've got the day and hour no one knows, which is the Feast of Trumpets. At the Feast of Trumpets, which is the fall time of the harvest, this remnant group of workers that went out into this harvest to bring in the great multitude will now start bringing them in with the help of the 144,000 who get sealed first. And they won't actually fully come in until, be taken in the mid-trib, great multitude, rapture into paradise until Passover of that 7th year. Which means there'll be, 6 months or so? Will have passed 6.5 months, maybe 7.5 months if it's second Passover. Will have passed. Exactly the things that we've been saying. So not only Are the 7 days of Passover unleavened bread a picture of the 7 years of seals? They are also directly connected to when the great multitude will be received up as the mid-trib great multitude at the time of Passover. It's wild. It's so awesome. You remember this? Let me show you an example of exactly this. We see right here. Oh, this is so awesome. Okay? In Jeremiah chapter 31, another very popular place we've been going to for a while. Jeremiah 31 is literally a picture of that end time frame of the 6th year of seals until that end time frame of the 7th year of seals. That's literally the prophetic picture all throughout Jeremiah 31. And in verse 8, it says, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth together, a great company shall return thither. This right here is the great multitude rapture. And remember, we shared this years ago. A sister caught this and shared it with me. When you go into the Septuagint, I use absolutely unequivocally, I use the KJV because we have proven the mysteries of the revelation are all with the KJV. But it doesn't mean we can't find little pieces of insight from apocryphas after we found the revelation in Scripture in the KJV. Okay, we've shown that with Second Esdras and Second Baruch and Jubilees and so many different books. Well, this is another example here with the Septuagint. Listen to what it says. We're in Jeremiah 31, verse 8. Behold, I will bring them from the north and will gather them from the end of the earth to the feast of Passover, and the people shall be a great multitude that shall return to their what? To the end of the earth. When is he going to bring them? At the feast of Passover. And it's going to be what? A great multitude. Man, when that was discovered, that the Septuagint even told us the timing of the mid-trib, it was awesome. It is absolutely awesome because we've taught it from the revelation for years. And here it is again, the Passover in this little mini story of these really 3 chapters of these 3 feasts. When the great multitude, when he comes with the mountain, remember? This is when he comes with the mountain. If we go to Daniel chapter 2, this is to the end of seals, right? It's the description of the beast, right? And the beast is destroyed when the mountain carved without hand, right? The mountain that's carved without hand. And I saw till that a stone was cut without hand, which smote the image upon the feet, which were of iron and clay. Remember, the 10 toes are like the 10 horns of the beast when he kills them at the end of seals, before he returns at mid-trumpets, and break them into pieces. And then the stone became a great mountain. Do you remember this in 2nd Esdras? Okay. You have the pre-trib, and they're all in bewilderment. After the pre-trib, then they're going to make war against each other. Then all the things that he talked about that will take place during seals. Then you'll see my son come, and a group, an innumerable multitude will come together desiring to conquer him. This is that Ezekiel 39 battle at the end of the 6th year of seals. And then what does it say? But he shall stand on top of Mount Zion, the mountain that becomes revealed, that was prepared and built. And Zion will come to be made manifest to all people. Look at that. Prepared and built, as you saw a mountain carved without hand. Okay? End of the 6th seal. And then he gathers the nations in the mid-7 seals. 7th year of seals. It's the same story. And you got the mountain being spoken about with the great multitude, with this great company coming to him. Now, this gets even better. Okay? It talks about loaves a couple of times here. This is just a little passing thing, but in John 6:9, it says, there is a lad here which has 5 barley loaves. Okay? So we get this mention of barley loaves twice in John chapter 6. Now, I want to show you something with this, just as a little side thing, because this term, barley loaves, is only used twice in the New Testament and once in the Old Testament. You want to know what's wild about this? In 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 42. Do you know what's wild about this in this timing of this mention? Remember, what's the timing of this in John 6 prophetically? It's the end of seals and the time of the great multitude. Okay? When he comes as Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim, right? The son of Joseph. Okay? It's Elijah is now done. Okay? The John the Baptist types have died, and the Elijah types, as John the Baptist, are taken up in the whirlwind. And who's going to take over? Who took over for Elijah? When Elijah was done his work, which represents the end of seals, who took over with a double portion? Elisha. Correct? It was Elisha. Do you know what 2 Kings is all about? It's the story of Elisha. Elijah's already out of the picture, and it's the story of Elisha. And it's in 2 Kings. Let me show you. See, what I'm showing you is how this doesn't just, the storyline just not right in here and a couple little pieces here and there, but it branches off into all sorts of things that we have taught on. All over the place that we have taught on these things. Okay? Look at this. The period of Israel's kings, which represents 1st and 2nd Kings. Okay? So after the Dark Ages, which is to the end of the 6th year of seals, the Lord is here, which is the picture of the church reformation, of the is that took place, and of the was of the Old Testament. It was the period of Israel's kings, which represents Christ, when he's coming as high priest and king. Oh, I'm putting out a lot of these words. Hopefully you'll catch them as I say them. King is one of them, right? He's coming as the son of Joseph, right? We know he's coming as Ephraim, the son of Joseph at this time. He's going to be high priest and king. Okay? And so who takes over in 2 Kings? After Elijah's work is done, Elisha takes over. Elijah's that prophetic type with the second portion, right? Or with the double portion. And it's in our 7 churches exactly to the end of the 6th year and in that 7th year of seals when Elijah's done and the typology of Elisha taking over. And where's it found? In the Old Testament one time in 2 Kings for Elisha. Just a great little side note tie in with that as well. Now, watch this. Now it gets even crazier. There's a lot in chapter 6. Okay, this end of seals, this end of the 6th year in that 7th year time frame. We already discussed that when the Lord's coming, he's coming with paradise, with heavenly Mount Zion, and he's going to gather them to paradise. Right? What does paradise represent, brothers and sisters? It represents the Garden of Eden, right? It's part of the kingdom of God. And it represents the Garden of Eden. Well, in John chapter 6, verse 10, listen to this. And Jesus said, make the men to sit down. Now there was much grass in this place. What? There was much grass in this place? Oh, thanks for the insight. You see, could you imagine reading the scriptures without the Strong's Concordance anymore? Could you imagine trying to read without the ability to have the Strong's Concordance at our fingertips? To connect the roiling of water? To connect barley loaves and doing searches on these words with the ability at our fingertips to do so? What on earth would much grass mean to anybody reading these scriptures without a Strong's Concordance in an understanding of prophecy? Without the revelation, you're not going to get it. Check it out. Make the men to sit down. Now there was much grass. Ta-da. Court or garden. Why on earth would it be garden? Why would he have them in this great multitude to go and sit down in the garden? Well, because as you know, he's coming with the place prepared. He's coming with paradise, with heavenly Mount Zion, to receive them unto himself, that where he is, there they may be also. And where is this place? The exact same place you all know, paradise, which is the garden, which is Eden. Look at this. Place of future happiness. Isn't that awesome? Oh, we still have more. There's still more in proving out this great multitude, him in the mountain at the time of Passover, gathering to himself. When he gathers them to himself, he's gathering them to himself in paradise, the place of much grass. It's so awesome. Now listen to this. One of those things I told you to remember. In John 6, verse 15, when Jesus therefore perceived that he would come, that they would come and take him by force, listen to this, to make him a king, he departed again into a mountain himself alone. You see that? They're so blown away by everything. And in the prophetic timing of this, seeing through the lens of end time eyes, it's all directly connected to the exact same period of time at the end of seals. And when he comes at the end of seals, what is he going to be, guys? They don't have to make him king this time. He will be coming what? As king. Remember, he will be coming as Messiah ben Joseph, right? Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim, right? Oops, where am I? We see it again right here in Psalms 110. The Lord said unto my Lord, the Father said unto the Son, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. Okay? This is also important because we're going to see the enemies in this as well. They're not all gone. He's still going to be in the midst of his enemies. And then he says, and thou shalt rule in the midst of thine enemies. Verse 4, the Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. The Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. Okay? At the end of seals. When he comes as Messiah ben Joseph, right? Or Messiah ben Ephraim, the son of Ephraim, he's coming as high priest and king. And here they are wanting to make him as king. You say, oh, well, Melchizedek there, it says as a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Well, isn't it interesting that in our chapters to years, in John chapter 14, we see him coming with heavenly Mount Zion, with paradise to receive them unto himself. And in chapter 14 of Genesis, we see the story of him, the first time Melchizedek shows up. And who is it that brings the blessings to him? Abraham. Who is Abraham? You see how it all connects? Abraham is the one directly connected to the end of seals, looking for the city that has foundations, which is the place of his inheritance, which the Lord is gathering the great multitude to the place that has the foundations. You see how crazy it is? All of it falls in order. So what is he called? Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. We know when the Lord comes at the end of seals, right, at the end of the 6th year of seals, we can even take this into Zechariah chapter 6, this prophetic timing also of the end of the 6th year of seals, and we see this same story with the typology of Josiah, okay, and it says, of Joshua, verse 11, then take the silver and gold and make crowns and set them upon the head of Joshua, the son of Josedek, the high priest. So Joshua and the one who is the branch, who is the Zerubbabel type, okay, one is high priest and king, and the other is also a king type. Because what does it say? It says, the council of peace shall be between them both. So what do we see? High priest and king. This Joshua type is the same Joshua type. Remember Moses, one of the two boats, one of the two remnant worker groups, the Moses company and the Elijah company. We generally always talk about the Elijah company. And what happens? Moses dies at the end. So it's kind of like at the end of SEALs, Moses' time is up. And then what happens? Joshua was the one who took him over into the promised land. Joshua's name is Yeshua, right? It's Jesus. And when we go into Numbers 13, you guys remember that story? He was what? From the tribe of Ephraim. Okay? Hosea, the son of Nun, is of the tribe of Ephraim, and he changed his name from Hosea to the son of Nun, Joshua, okay? Jesus, which is the Jewish leader, the Christ, Yeshua. Always, guys, it is so crazy. The timing and these connections and the words that are spoken within it. Look, it's tracking all of it in order. It's literally the end of the 6th year in that 7th year of SEALs. And they're going to go up to sit in paradise. He's going to be king, high priest, and king. It's so great. Okay. Let's keep going down. Let's keep going down. Oh, watch this. In John 6, verse 27, we're still at the end of SEALs, right? In that 7th year of SEALs. It says, labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him hath God the Father sealed. Sealed. Okay? Kept, secured, stamped with a seal. Huh. Do we know a group of people in the 7th year of SEALs that are going to receive a stamp? That are going to receive a seal on their foreheads to serve the Lord? Let me show you this little side note over here. This is the word sealed, okay? In the New Testament. So we see it out of all the Gospels, it's used one time in John chapter 6. One time in that chapter. And look at the book of Revelation. Okay? This is the back of the book for seals. But then what do we have? Who's sealed? Revelation 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. It's the 144,000 that are the ones who are sealed. I told you this is why I was giggling when I was doing this. I could not believe the continuous just one after the other showing everything we've taught playing out in order. And then it says in John 6:28, then said they unto him, what shall we do that we might work for the Lord, work the works of God? So those who are sealed are asking now, what shall we do for the works of God? And Jesus answered and said unto them, this is the work of God, that you believe on him whom he hath sent. Remember we talked about this salvation not being about, watching and praying and the diligence and all that, because this is in the end of days, right? This is those who are going to take part in the mid-trib great multitude. They're the ones that 2 Corinthians says kind of like in Christ, right? Not the first group in Christ, spirit-filled, but those who are like in Christ. Well, what if we come to the end of Joel chapter 2? Joel chapter 2, remember, we've got the teaching of Joel in order as the same storyline of the beginning, the middle, and the end with the Lord's three comings. And what do we see? Again, this is to the end of seals. The Lord came on what? He's here on heavenly Mount Zion, the holy mountain of the Lord. And what do we see? It says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. Same story. Those who call on the Lord. Now listen to what they say next. They're literally talking about it in the past, right? In the past tense. Now, when we read this in our current state, when the church reads this, it's of course reading it because, oh, it's past tense. They're talking about the Old Testament when they came out of the wilderness or when they were in the wilderness. But we know this prophetically in the is to come, that manna is going to be given again in the midst of seals. And so what do we see? Except it shouldn't be talking about them being given it now. It should be talking about it in a past tense because this is at the end of seals. So that it should be a past tense that they were given manna in the desert. And that's exactly what it says. John 6:31. Our fathers did eat manna in the desert, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Watch this. Let's go to Revelation chapter 2. You guys know, you've been here for a little bit. Those who have, we've got the revelation of the 7 churches of the end of days revealed for the end of days in order, in incredible depth now. And look at what comes when you come to the church of Pergamum, which is when the beast and the false prophet of Balaam and Balak show up. This is the time of the fleeing into the wilderness, when the beast gets the seat, Satan's seat, and his power and authority from Revelation 13. And listen to what it says in Revelation 2:17. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna. Why do you think this is here? Because when they flee into the wilderness, Mark's discourse, the fleeing into the wilderness, when the beast gets his power to continue for 42 months, at about mid-ish seals, the Lord will provide the manna in the wilderness. And so here we are in John 6 at the end of seals. And they're talking about them having received manna in the wilderness. And what happened to those that received manna in the wilderness? Well, many of them died, right? There's still going to be many people, even the Christians, dying at that point. So even though they received that manna, they're dying. But wouldn't it make sense that if he gave them of that manna, then the true bread of life would be the one to come down and to rescue them and to be no more thirsting and no more hunger because he is the one who's come down as the bread of life? Well, let's keep reading and see. Verse 33. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven and giveth life unto the world. Sounds familiar too, right? And giveth life unto the world, because he came down from heaven at that point, right? With heavenly Mount Zion. Verse 35. And Jesus said unto them, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. Does that sound familiar to some of you? Of course it does, right? What if we go into Revelation 7 again? We see the great multitude having come in, and what does he tell them? Verse 16, Revelation 7. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more. Told you, it's all the end of the seals. It's all related to the end of seals. Every single portion layered within this mystery, within all of the Gospels like this. It's insanity. You know, we've shown it even why certain chapters, right? How many times have we talked about that? Where certain chapters are laid out in a specific way, different from the other Gospels, because of what they reveal in their order. Or Luke's, before the Transfiguration, we've got like 27 verses which is all about the 7 days, the anointing of the apostles in the 7 days, and then the Lord coming after on the 8th day. But in Mark, you got one verse, because the Lord is coming before they will see him. They will have seen him come. And then it's the end of the 6th day, right? Like the 6th year. But he comes just slightly before to defeat the enemies at the end, like the Ezekiel 39 war, at the end of the 6th year of seals. But in Matthew's, there's nothing before the transfiguration story. Because we are told in Matthew's gospel, in his discourse, that the Lord will immediately after the tribulation of those days. So there's no verses before. It just starts right away with the transfiguration in Matthew's. These things they're everything. Absolutely all of it is inspired by the leading of the Holy Ghost throughout not only of the writers, but those who laid out the chapters, the verses, the order of them throughout the books. We have proven here unequivocally that the purpose of their laying out, all of it, is Holy Spirit inspired. It's awesome. But I said unto you, let's go verse 36. There's a lot here, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. Verse 37, all that the Father hath given unto me shall come to me. He that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out. Look at this. For I came down from heaven. That's exactly what happens at the end of seals. He came down from heaven. They will have all seen him, and they'll freak out, and they're going to want to hide in the rocks and mountains and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come at the end of the 6th year of seals. Verse 39. And this is the Father's will, which hath sent me, that all which he hath given me, I should lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day. All talking about the last day now. And this is the will of him that sent me, that everyone which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him at the last day. There it is again, right? I am the bread of life, which came down from heaven. Are you ready for this? Remember, I told you there was reasons I was saying certain things, right? Verse 42. And they said, is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph? Is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph? Joseph? Do you understand why this is in this chapter? It's perfectly placed in this chapter, because when he comes at the end of seals, who is he coming as? The ox, Messiah ben Ephraim. Who is what? The son of Joseph, the Messiah ben Joseph / Messiah ben Ephraim. Remember the description that we've covered so many times in Numbers 24, the second blessing, when he comes as the unicorn, that ox, that bull, and he's going to destroy all the enemies because he's coming as the ox. He's coming as Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim. And what are they calling him here? They're calling him the son of Joseph, Messiah ben Ephraim. Okay? It's all in perfect order, guys. In fact, watch this. Oh, man, some of these things are just coming to me as I'm going, and I'm just giddy because it's so unbelievable. Watch this. In Luke chapter 3, remember we talked about Luke in order? We talked about chapter 3, for over a few years now we've taught on this. And in Luke in order, Luke chapter 3 represents that timing of him coming at the end of seals. And who did they say? Being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph. Hello. Man, this is craziness. Craziness. Where is it? Okay, as the son of Joseph. So, I don't want to take, we're already it's going to be a long one. I knew it was going to be longer because there's so many awesome details. But you guys, you see what I'm saying here? It's literally connected to the week of Passover. We know the mid-trib is connected to the week of Passover. We know it plays out as 7 years as the 7 days of Passover. The 7th day, which is the 7th year, which should be the year of rest, And there is no warring, but he is going to save people during that 7th year, which is going to be the great multitude. He's going to be in his mountain. He will have given them, in the past tense, in the midst of seals, will have given them the manna. He's coming as Messiah ben Joseph. All of these things. He's going to be made king, which he was worried at this point that they were going to make him king, but then he is going to be made king, and they're going to be sitting on the grass in paradise when they come. Man, every time I read it and I go through it, it blows me away even more. Well, it gets even more detailed. I've taught you guys, remember, a while back, and we've taught on it every once in a while. Remember how we've shown, based on the last chapter of Luke, Mark, and Matthew, the 3 remnant groups, we can see that the Lord is upset and he rails, right? He rails on them in Mark's gospel, the last chapter after the resurrection. And he rails on them because they didn't believe the witness of the 2 that came to tell them first. Yeah, the same 2, you got it, right? Of the 2 that told them. And so they weren't ready, and Jesus is upset with them. And we see that something happens after the seals in this time of trumpets that's soon coming next, that we know that at some point in the trumpet judgments, somebody is going to fall, right? And we see this when we get to Matthew's discourse, that there's this, that servant who said, he's not coming, and he goes and he starts beating the other servants and doing all that, right? And he's going to be cast out into the darkness with the weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, that servant we have known is connected. If it's not the 144,000, maybe it's the apostles, or it's somebody connected who will be here during the time of trumpets. We've taught on this numerous times. We've seen it revealed in the scriptures. And here we are. Again, I'm telling you this for a reason. Here we are now in John 6, in this prophetic picture laced into these scriptures, being in the 7th year of seals, leaving after this only the time of trumpet judgments. Okay? Only the 7 years of trumpets, which we know represent in the 3 feasts the 7 years of tabernacles. So remember that. It's exactly as we've taught. And just imagine, it's going to be revealed in this chapter. What are the chances? What are the chances that it gets revealed in this chapter that the one who is there now is going to be one that falls and turns on him, that gives him up? And he's mentioned here at the end of seals because it's going to be coming in the time of trumpets. And wouldn't you know, the time of the trumpet judgments, as the 7 days, the 7 years of tabernacles, is related to the gospel of Matthew in his discourse. And where do we read the story of the 30 pieces of silver? Because of Judas. We read it only in Matthew's discourse, in Matthew's gospel, where it literally says the 30 pieces of silver. And where else do we read about it? You guessed it. We read about it in Zechariah chapter 11, the 30 pieces of silver, which is directly at mid-trumpets after the temple is built. But hold on to your horses. We're getting there. I don't want to get too far ahead, right? So here they are again. John 6, verse 48. Jesus again says, I am the bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. Okay, again, it's the was of the Old Testament, but it is also a past tense, did eat manna, just as those who are in seals did eat the manna. Some of them will have died, and the rest will have been taken alive. So there are none left, as if they're dead to them, right? So then we keep going. Let's see, verse 51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. Let's go 53. Oh, this is except you eat of the flesh and drink of his blood, and I will raise him up the last day. There it is again. Keep going. Again, verse 58. This is the bread which came down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. Let's keep going a little bit further. Does this offend you? Verse 63. Okay, here we come. Verse 63. It is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. But there are some of you that believe not. For Jesus knew from the beginning who they were that believed not. Listen to this. And who should betray him. What are the chances, brothers and sisters, that this is mentioned in the prophetic vision of the end of days, being the end of the 7th year time frame of seals, that now this guy is being mentioned? And when we've talked about this, it's related to the end of Mark's discourse, which is the end of seals. And we see the Lord upset with them, and we know that there's a falling away of a specific person or of a couple people that relate to a betrayal in the midst of trumpet judgments. It could only be spoken of like this if this is prophetically also telling us the same timing, being the end of seals. And he said, therefore said I unto you, that no man can come unto me except it were given unto him of my Father. What else do we see? Jesus said on the 12th, I will also go away. And Simon Peter answered, where will you go? Show you the living God, Son of God. And then here it is. In verse 70, Jesus answered, have I not chosen you 12? And one of you is a devil. Obviously, he spoke of Judas Iscariot. So, you know what it's coming across as, right? It may not be one of the 144,000. That was always one of my suspicions, that is it somebody within the group of the 144,000? And I've never really understood where it could be. I've had my suspicions of the apostles, but I wasn't really certain if it was necessarily going to play out at in the same context. Because when we've seen it in what we've taught in the revelation of the end, we see it happening in the time of trumpets. We know it relates to Matthew, and it was always telling us about Judas Iscariot. But at the end of Mark's gospel, we saw how when they're being sealed or when they're being told what they're going to go out and do, we know that even though it talks about the 11, we know it's not really about them in the prophetic, but about the second worker group, which is the 144,000. So seeing that he was upset and he rails on them and he didn't eat with them and they were already eating and so forth, I thought most likely it was related to the 144. But we seem to have our answer more clearly now. We're being told again, and this is why it's such a big deal, is because this chapter, being specifically the end of the 7th year of seals, at the end of the end of seals being the 7th year, we're being told again in this revealed mystery of this fractal that again it's this Judas type. Well, Judas again was one of the apostles from the beginning. And did you hear what he said here? For Jesus knew from the beginning, okay, who it was that should betray him. Okay, those that didn't believe, but specifically the one who would betray him. And what do we know about the revelation of the end of days? We know that when the beginning of the end of days starts, which is at the time of the pre-trib, what happens with the Lord? What happens in John chapter 20? You guys will remember this. We have the prophetic picture in John chapter 20. Mary Magdalene as that typology of the bride. He leaves. Remember, he says, "Don't touch me." He's going on. He still has to go to the Father. Mary Magdalene is that prophetic type of the Song of Solomon, right? Mary Magdalene and what her name means, and it takes it back to the Greek, right? Her breasts are like towers. It goes back to not only the Greek but the Hebrew in the Song of Solomon, the bed of flowers and the pyramid type of her breasts, right? So we've understood that, but then what happens is when the pre-trib's bride is taken at the beginning of the 50 days, which this is here in John, it says then the same day at evening. Meaning the pre-trib has been taken during the sunlight, during the day, and the Lord's going to return that same day at evening. And what is he going to do? He's going to meet not with the disciples, not with the remnant group chosen from among the bride. They were already told just before the pre-trib to wait until he returns from the wedding. But at the beginning, at the moment of the pre-trib, he returns on that same day. And what does he do? He breathes the Holy Ghost on the disciple. On the apostles. So I find it very, very coincidental that when we're here in John 6, knowing everything we now know about it through a prophetic lens, that he says he knew from the beginning the one who should betray him. Because the beginning starts, quote unquote, after the pre-trib, begins with the apostles at the start of the 50 days. We've even proven this out in the church of Ephesus in relation to the apostles. So whoever these modern day apostles are, whether it's 12 or 300 or however many it might be, though I believe it will be 300 again, 12 again, it's again looking as if somebody among them is going to be the one to fall, not one of the 144. But recall, there would be a replacement for him, right? We know that there's a replacement for him, because if we come, man, we're going deep. If new people are watching this, man, they have no idea what we're talking about. This is for the seasoned, okay? When we come into Revelation, not 20. Oh, wait. Is it 19? No, it's 21. When we come into Revelation 21, you see, we got to remember this, because when we see New Jerusalem coming down, what is she adorned as? Well, we have the foundations, which are the 12 apostles. So, if there's 12 apostles and they're the foundations, well, how did one of them fall? There would only be 11. But there was a 12th added, wasn't there? You see, you can say it's Matthias, right? That the other apostles have chosen, but the Lord chose Paul. So, you see, there's still going to be 12, even though one fell. When we look at the walls, they're to the 144 cubits. There is nothing scripturally or prophetic that tells us that some of the 144,000 would fall. You see? Because of the 144,000, they're being given powers to not be able to fall or be hurt by the enemy. And they're sealed with the name of God. So how would they fall? Right? They would automatically, they're God, they belong to God anyways. They have been sealed. Once they've been sealed, there's no falling for them. Even if they did a little something wrong, it wouldn't matter. And then, of course, you have the gates. And what do the gates represent? Where is the gates? Okay, where are the gates? And then you got the 12 gates, which are the 12 tribes. Okay? The 12 gates relate to the 12 tribes of Israel, and we know that they represent the 144, the ones that go out of the 12 tribes that go out during the millennial reign as the gates through which everybody will enter during the millennial reign to come and worship the Lord. Okay? So here it is, 12 gates, the 12 tribes. So you have the foundation is the apostles. One falls away, but we see scripturally that another one came in to replace. So you would still have your 12. There's no reason for the 12 tribes. There won't be any falling away for them in the millennial reign. And the 144,000 are sealed with God, so they can't fall away because they've got a seal on them. So there is no falling away for these groups, which means the only one that lines up is one of the modern day apostles falling away as well. And how do we know this? It's given to us again in the evidence of John chapter 6 as the end of the 6th year of seals. Literally telling us what we've known through all of these revelations, revealing the end of days as never before. We have chapter 6, end of days, end of the 6 years, in that 7th year of seals, and we're being told one of them is going to betray him. And what do we have coming next? The 7 years of trumpets now coming next. So out of the 3 feasts of the Lord, there is only one, where am I? There is only one feast left, right? So this is what I was saying, Zechariah 11, right? We see the 30 pieces of silver. This is when the covenant is broken. The Lord makes a covenant at the end of the 7th year of seals with all people, and then it's broken because the Satan is cast down, the pit is open, the beast comes back, right? The temple had been rebuilt, so he's going to walk into it, and then all of a sudden, Satan's cast down and all these things happen, and you've got the one who betrays, which is the same as the Judas type, and we see that right here in Matthew 27. Look at that, 30 pieces of silver. Do you know it's only mentioned as money or coin or something like that, just money I think it is, in Luke and in Mark? Only Matthew mentions that it's 30 pieces of silver. And in the chapters to years, Zechariah chapter 11, 14 chapters for 14 years, it's in the 11th chapter, which is what? Literally mid-trumpets, which is at the end of about 10 and a half years. The temple will have taken about 3.5 years to build. It will be built. The Lord will go in it at mid-trumpets and then be cut off when they're going to want to try and kill him. Who's the one that betrays? Well, we were just shown again that it appears it would be one of the coming future apostles that is chosen from the beginning. Not the disciple workers, not the Smyrna group, okay? Not the Smyrna group, but the apostles. And you might say, if you're new or newer, you might say, well, in Revelation chapter 21, when New Jerusalem comes down, it's got the apostles, it's got the 144, which work trumpets, and it has the 12 tribes, which are going out during the millennial reign. Where are the Smyrna workers? Where are the Smyrna workers? They're the ones putting their necks on the line. So where are they going to be? What's their reward in all of this? Right here. In John, I need to go to Revelation. In Revelation chapter 20, it's right here. Those who never received the mark or worship the beast, that are going to be resurrected to reign with Christ 1,000 years. These are they, okay? The rest of the dead will not be resurrected until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power. Okay? The only group this relates to is Smyrna. In the church of Smyrna, you'll see that their blessing is that they would not be hurt or taste of the second death. Okay? Who are they going to be? They're going to be the priests of God and of Christ, and they shall reign with him 1,000 years. So that is their reward, while the apostles, the 144, and the 12 tribes will be part of New Jerusalem. These guys will be the co-heirs with Christ. Okay? So, where does that now leave us? That, of course, now leaves us to one more feast. Isn't there one more feast, the third feast of the Lord? You see, there's one more feast of the Lord, which is Tabernacles, which is 7 days as 7 years. But don't forget what happened that I was repeating to you guys earlier. You have the 6 days, the 7 days of unleavened bread, but it plays out as sixth, and then the seventh is the solemn assembly, which means in the seventh day, which should be the rest, or the seventh year, which is the rest of the seventh year for the land and everything, it's a picture of a Sabbath. And you're to do no servile work there in it. So for a long time, we had wondered, how could the great multitude happen in the seventh year? Well, now we have the answer. It's based on the sixth and then the seventh of unleavened bread, which is Passover. But remember this, that it happens on the day of rest, or quote unquote, the year of rest, as the days to years. So now you're going to see something that when we get in to this story of the 7 years of tabernacles, and which goes to, by the way, to the 8th day, okay, which leaves us what? Well, if we go back to our chart, we're now at this point, seals has all come to an end, and then you've got the 7 years, which is the second 7 of the 14 years, which is a picture of the 7 days of tabernacles, and then you have the great 8th day, which is called the Jubilee, the new beginning. What happens at the Jubilee? The Lord will renew the earth, right? He will renew and restore the earth. If you remember, we taught on this with Ezekiel. Ezekiel playing out on the Nissan side. Go to chapter 47 of Ezekiel in the chapters to years, right? So Ezekiel in the chapters to years, it doesn't play out on the sowing and reaping from Tishri. It plays out on the Nissan side. And we come to Ezekiel chapter 47, and chapter 47 plays out as right here in the 14th year on this side, which would be right at the beginning on the sowing and reaping side, which would be the beginning of the Jubilee. I'm not going to complicate by going too far over there on that, but, okay, that is the great 8th day, when he has water. Remember that? The water going forth. Let me go over there real quick. Ezekiel chapter 47. We've had this in our chapters to years for a long time, and now we finally revealed just a couple months ago or so the revelation that Ezekiel is playing out from the Nissan side count of the 14 years, and many others are playing out on the sowing and reaping side. And what do we see happens in Ezekiel 47? He's going to renew the earth. Waters are going to flow from him, from the temple, from the threshold, and renew all of the earth. And then he's going to return. He's going to, I should say return, he's going to bring all the tribes that were kept in protection in the wilderness. He's going to bring them back from the wilderness after, remember this teaching? After he renews the earth, after he renews it with the waters that will flow from him to turn everything into this renewed earth, as Isaiah 61, I think, says, when the earth will be renewed and people will live hundreds and hundreds of years again, that it says even a child, somebody at 100 will be as a child, because he's renewing and restoring the whole earth. And when he renews it, then in the year of Jubilee, he's going to bring them that were protected out in the wilderness till the end of the 14 years were done, from mid-trumpets to the end. He's going to bring them back, and that's when every man will receive his portion. And that's why Ezekiel 47 starts with the renewing of the water going out and renewing the earth, before it then at the end starts talking about the tribes coming and receiving their portion at the very end of 47 and all into 48, which would be right here when they come in the midst of the Jubilee and start all receiving their portion. Okay? So that's the events connected to the 8th day. So if we now look, and we see this with Deuteronomy, it's the third feast, and we covered the middle feast, which became the first feast in that mystery feast. And it just so happened that the second one, which we know is connected to the 7 years of seals, is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the Passover, and that just happened to be chapter 6. What do you think the chances are if we go to chapter 7 of John that it leaves us one feast? Well, wouldn't you know it? Of course, you already knew this, right? John 7. After these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in the Jewry because the Jews sought to kill him. Remember, I was telling you this earlier? 4 times is the word them seeking to kill him. Isn't that crazy? What are we talking about here? We're talking about trumpets and getting to the point of mid-trumpets. And what happens at mid-trumpets, brothers and sisters? Messiah getting cut off. They want to kill him, right? They want to kill him. Well, guess what? Do you know when we come to our book and we come to the 7 churches? Remember this? Here is the reform. This is when the Lord has come as Messiah, ben Joseph, right, / Ephraim, when he is the Melchizedek, high priest and king, ruling in the midst of his enemies, right? Why ruling in the midst of his enemies? Because during trumpet times, during the 7 years of tabernacles as the days of to the 7 years of trumpets, he's still going to be ruling in the midst of his enemies, right? Some of the Jews are still going to be against him, not believing that he is who he says he is. Well, watch this. Then you have the Church of Philadelphia, which represents the 144,000. And at the end of the first half of their ministry, which goes to about mid-trumpets, look what it says. It's the period of Israel's removal. Because Messiah gets cut off again. When Messiah gets cut off at about 10.5 years after the temple had been rebuilt, then the apostasy happens, and it's Laodicea, the end of the age Laodicea of the end of days. The 7 churches will play out over again over the 50 days and 14 years. And this Laodicean apostasy that's taking place is during the time of what? Judah's kings. You see? Remember what it said also? That they would reject him and would believe another? That happens during seals. But it also happens again, more specifically to the Jews, in the midst of trumpets. What are we living in right now? We are living in the apostasy age, right? The Laodicean age. And who's ruling right now in Israel? Judah's kings. There is no Israel, right? They're Jews. They're not the house of Israel. There's some priest lines in there too, but they're the house of Judah. And we're in the apostasy age. When Satan's cast down, Messiah gets cut off. Hello. The Jews, right? Not all Jews, but the Pharisees and all these guys wanting to kill him. And look at this. This time it's the Feast of Tabernacles that's at hand. Do you understand how crazy that is? 3 feasts to the 3 times to the Lord, not in order of Passover, Feast of Weeks, Tabernacles, because we know that's not the way it's supposed to be. The Revelation has revealed that. It goes Feast of Weeks, this more mysterious one, then Passover, unleavened bread, and then Tabernacles. And it's exactly what we have laid out in 5, 6, 7 of the Gospel of John. I'm telling you, it is crazy awesome. Especially as we continue, as we start to, yes, we're winding this down. There's a fair bit in here, but we're not going to necessarily cover everything in so much detail because it's a long teaching, I know, but it's so awesome. So now here we are in the Feast of Tabernacles, which is as the 7 days of 7 years. And we follow it down, John 7, verse 4. For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world. Remember, you might say, well, what do you mean? Why is he doing these things in secret? Well, if you recall, if we go to Mark's discourse, remember what happened when the Lord came at the end of seals? When he's coming at the end of seals, He's coming in the clouds. The one in Mark's discourse and Luke's discourse does mean in. The one in Matthew's doesn't mean in, it means on when you look at the Strong's Concordance. Okay? So he came in the clouds. They'll know that it's the Lord to some extent, but not everybody's going to see him, and he's not going to make himself aware even when he ends up going to step into the temple. He's not running around, you see, because he's not being made known to the world fully until he's defeated all the enemies and he is returned feet down on the Mount of Olives. So we keep reading, and it says, for neither did his brethren believe in him. Then Jesus said unto them, my time is not yet come, but your time is always ready. The world cannot hate you, but me it hates, because I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. See that? He's still saying his time isn't yet. His time isn't yet for what? To be shown to the whole world. To be made known everywhere. Why? Because he's still the Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim. He's still as the ox. If you recall, again, Numbers 24 that we go to so often now because it's the three comings of the Lord, we see he is Reuben, right? The man with the pitcher of water. The second, he is Ephraim, the ox, the wild bull, who's going to destroy the nations at the end of seals that come against him. And then when he returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives, he crouched, he lay down as a lion, as a great lion. Who shall stir him up? This is the direct description of Judah. He will not be made known to everyone until he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives, as we read in Matthew chapter 24, which is immediately after the tribulation of those days, which is the seventh trumpet of Revelation. That is when he returns, when he will be seen as lightning, as Luke 17:24, as lightning from one end unto the other, as Matthew 24, verse 27, from lightning from one end to the other. Okay? And then in verse 8 of John 7, he tells them, go ye up into the feast. I go not up yet unto the feast, for my time is not yet full come. Now listen to what happens in verse 10. But when his brethren were gone up, then went he up also unto the feast. You see that? He still went at the beginning of Tabernacles. He just didn't do it openly, but as it were, in secret. You see? He just didn't go openly. He just went privately up. He went up quietly to show, he went up quietly and not publicly. Okay? Then watch what happens. Listen to this. Yeah. In verse 12. And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him. For some said, he is a good man. Listen to this. Others said, nay, but he deceiveth the people. Isn't that crazy? Do you know what this is perfectly in alignment with? They think, some of them think he's a good guy, but some are thinking, no, he is a deceiver. He's deceiving the people. Brothers and sisters, how many times have we broken this down for you? What have we said about those who believe in a 7-year tribulation? In a 7-year tribulation, they do not understand that the one who is going to be here during the time of the rebuilding of the temple is the Messiah on heavenly Mount Zion at the end of the 6th year of seals, all the way through trumpets to the end until the cutoff, and then he returns feet down. They don't realize that Daniel chapter 9:27 has nothing to do with the 7 years of seals, but is all about the final year when the Lord returns feet down. They have not understood that it's 14 years, and so in their 7-year thinking, they believe that the one who is here to build the temple which will be at the beginning of trumpets time, at the beginning of the second 7 years, which is trumpets, which is the typology of tabernacles. The temple will begin to get built on the foundation that will have been laid during seals. And who is there? The Messiah ben Joseph Ephraim, which is the high priest and king Melchizedek Lord, and the other one who is ruling with him, who is going to be the modern day Zerubbabel. And the temple will get built. And what does the church tell us about this? That whoever builds the temple is the one who is the Antichrist. Hello. We've taught about this for many, many, many years. The one who rebuilds the temple and is there as the overseer, which is more Zerubbabel, the modern day Zerubbabel. The Lord is there with him, who is the greater, because he is the high priest, who is the one directly connected to the Father. They are both serving as king together at the time of peace, and the temple is getting rebuilt. They've all been told that the one who is there during the rebuilding and is involved in the rebuilding of the temple is going to be the Antichrist, who is deceiving the people and rebuilding it, and then he's going to go in and declare himself God, and then they'll realize he's the Antichrist. They couldn't be more wrong. The Lord will go up, or the Lord will enter into the temple once it's built. But when is the temple going to be built, brothers and sisters? When does the temple get finished? We've explained this many times in 1 Kings, right? In 1 Kings 6 is a great example. Another one is in Psalms, right? Psalms 90 and 10. 70 to 80 years. Tribulation and sorrow. And then the cutoff, right? And then soon cut off. And then we fly away. That's the last 3.5 years to the end of trumpets. Okay, to the end of the 14 years. You've got this 10.5 years until the cutoff. Well, the temple is being built after the 7 in those about 3.5 years. And we see it right here. Also in 1 Kings chapter 6. In the 4th year. So out of the 14 years from the beginning, in the 4th year, was the foundation of the house of the Lord laid. Just like Zechariah chapter 4. 14 chapters, chapter 4, foundation is laid by modern day Zerubbabel. Then what happens? They come against, the beast is there, chaos breaks out. The Lord defeats them at the end of seals. And then when trumpets begin, they're going to start rebuilding the temple on the foundation that was laid, which is exactly what we read in Zechariah chapter 8. Just so happens there's the Lord on his heavenly mount, on his Zion, right? On his Mount Zion, the holy mountain of the Lord. The remnant people, he's bringing them from all the east and the west coast, right? And then what happens? He says, let your hands be strong, okay? Let your hands be strong, you that hear in these days these words by the mouth of the prophets, which were in the day that the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid, that the temple might be built. You see, the foundation had to be laid first, and then the temple is going to be built at the beginning of trumpets time. And he says, because there was no peace, because the affliction, red horse rider, I sent everyone against his neighbor. Okay? Exact same storyline. Until what? Until the temple has been rebuilt. We're in Zechariah chapter 11. Satan is cast down. We know the pit is going to open. The covenant is going to be broken that was made because of what the people have done. And now you see that deception by one of the modern day, it would appear, apostles as the Judas. Which is why the warning came in chapter 6 at the very end as trumpets was about to begin. So we know that the temple is being built, and it's the first half of like the 7 days of tabernacles. It's the first half approximately that it's being built. So when do you think Jesus would come into the temple? Watch this. Okay? So they think he's the deceiver. At the same time, we've proven that the church said whoever builds it is the one who is the deceiver, they think. They've completely missed the understanding because they've missed the Gospels in the 14 years. That's why I always tell everybody to listen to that. And then listen to this. Verse 13, John 7. Howbeit no man spoke openly of him for fear of the Jews. Again, why? Because now it's this fear of the Jews. It's back to the time of the Jews and the Jews' kings. Remember, they were of their father, the devil. Not all of them. Remember this, not all the Jews that are over there in Israel. Many of them will get saved. You see, they'll be saved. They understand when their Lord comes at the end of seals. They understand that he's going to destroy their enemies, bring them back into the land, and then the temple's going to get rebuilt. But not all of them believe that this Messiah ben Ephraim, Joseph, is going to be the one to do that with them. So they're going to think he's the deceiver. Some of them, mainly the Pharisees and the Sadducees types. Now, when the temple's built, what's going to happen? That's when the Lord's going to go step into the temple as soon as it's been finished, right? As soon as it's been built, which is about mid-trumpets, which is about the midst of tabernacles, right? This is what we were showing here in our 7 years of trumpet judgments is the 7 days as 7 years of tabernacles. And somewhere about the midst, once it's rebuilt, the Lord would go in it, right? Well, here we are in tabernacles. They're going to want to start killing them. And in chapter 7, verse 14, listen to what it says. Now about the midst of the feast. So now, about the midst of tabernacles, which is the midst of the 7 years of trumpet judgments as the 7 days to 7 years of tabernacles, Jesus went up into the temple and taught. It's so awesome, right? It's so crazy. All of these things in order. And the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned? Jesus answered them, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. Come down a little bit further, verse 19. Did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you keepeth the law. Why do you go about to, why do you go about to kill me? Shows up 4 times in this chapter, and 3 times after the point of him coming at midst. Because at the midst is the time of the cutoff. We've shown it from Daniel. We've shown it in Zechariah. We've shown it in Matthew's discourse. That's the abomination of desolation that's going to take place. So now he comes in the midst of trumpets to go into the temple. Why the midst? Do you see how crazy? Do you see how awesome this is? I'm losing my voice, but it's worth it. It's worth every moment. Do you know why in the prophetic typology? Do you know why in your end time eyes that he came into the temple about the midst of the feast? Because that's precisely when he's coming in the 7th year of trumpets. It's precisely the time when the temple will be built, and he will go into the temple before they go after him to try and kill him. You see? He goes in the midst of the feast. He goes into the temple like the midst of the 7th year trumpets as tabernacles, the 7 days to 7 years, and now they want to kill him. And Jesus says, and Jesus answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and you marvel. Moses, therefore, gave you circumcision. Remember that you're going to see something here now that I was telling you guys to remember earlier. Moses, therefore, gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers. And you, on the Sabbath day, circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you, meaning why are you angry at me? Because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day. Do you realize why they're angry with him? Do you know what the prophetic mystery is in this? Why are they angry? Because he made a man whole on the Sabbath day. Because brothers and sisters, oh, it's so crazy. Remember, the Lord said he will use the Gentiles to make the Jews jealous. Hello. right? In Romans. He will use them to make them jealous. But what happens when their time is over? He will turn his focus back to them, right? So what would be the ultimate thing to make them jealous? The Lord God, the Lord Jesus, literally taking all of the fullness of the Gentiles who have come to Christ in the midst of seals, will have taken them when? As I was telling you to remember earlier, will take them on what? Remember unleavened bread, 6 days and the seventh rest, and you shall do no servile work. And these 6 days are as 6 years, and the seventh day is the seventh year, which is the solemn assembly. And thou shalt do no servile work. And what is he going to do? He's going to make man whole. He's going to make man whole in the seventh year on the Sabbath day. Remember, these are pictures of days to years. And what are we seeing? That the Jews are upset with him because on the Sabbath day, he made man whole. He made the fullness of men, of the Gentiles, whole, which he said in Romans 2,000 years ago that he was going to use them to make them jealous. Do you know of any Jews that are jealous of Christians today? I know of none. I have never heard of one. Oh, we have Messianic Jews, Jews that have come to Christ. They're not jealous of us. They're now on the same side. But all those who are Jews do not like Christians. Specifically the rabbis and all of those guys behind the scenes, right? They despise Christians. There's been nothing that's said, oh, wow, they've been so richly rewarded by the Lord. Oh, I can't believe it. The ultimate is going to be when they are resurrected, made whole on the Sabbath day, represented as the year, which is the seventh year, as the seventh day of unleavened bread. And they're upset that he has made them whole on the Sabbath day. Not about a circumcision on the Sabbath day. Not that he has circumcised somebody on the Sabbath day, but that he has made man whole on the Sabbath day. You see that? Because he used them to bring them to jealousy. And right now, I know over the last 2,000 years, no Jews that are jealous for Christians. But man, oh man, the fullness of the Gentiles come in will be an ultimate anger to so many Jews, or in jealousy to so many, right? Verse 25. Then said some of them of Jerusalem, is this not he whom they seek to kill? Look at this conversation. Mid trumpets, he goes in, and then boom, now they want to kill him. And they're still upset for what he did to the Gentiles, bringing them in on the Sabbath day, making man whole. But lo, he speaketh boldly, and they say nothing unto him. But the rulers know indeed that do the rulers know indeed that this is the very Christ? Howbeit, we know this man whence he is, but when Christ cometh, no man knoweth whence he is. You see, because they say, we know who he is. He's the Messiah, son of Joseph. You see, he is the son of Joseph, Messiah ben Ephraim. Verse 28. Then cried Jesus in the temple as he taught, saying, you both know me, and you know whence I am. I am not come of myself, but he that sent me is true, whom you know not. But I know him, for I am from him, and he hath sent me. Then they sought to take him. Hello. But no man dared lay hands on him, because his hour was not yet come. And many of the people believed on him, and said, when Christ cometh, will he do more miracles than these which this man hath done. Okay, some do start coming to believe, right? And then it says, verse 32, the Pharisees heard that the people murmured such things concerning him, and the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to take him. And Jesus said unto them, listen to this. Listen, the fact that this is here yet again. And Jesus said unto them, yet a little while I am with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. Remember what happens when he gets cut off? When he gets cut off, remember what happens? He goes back to the Father. He resurrects back to the Father before he returns, right? You shall seek me, and you shall not find me. And where I am, thither you cannot come. Do you see how wild that this is here in this chapter out of all the chapters? Do you know how this relates to Matthew's gospel? Watch this. In Matthew chapter 24, okay, there's the abomination of desolation, right? Messiah is about to be cut off. He's going away. They can't follow him. And listen to what it says. Verse 23, Matthew 24. This is the exact same timing we're talking about. Then if any man, now remember, this isn't in Luke, this isn't in Mark, this is in Matthew only because it's at the time of the cutoff. If any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. Okay? Because then who's coming to arise? The false Christ is coming back, right? That abomination of desolation, when Satan is cast down, the pit is open, the beast returns, and all three of them are there with the fallen angels, with those that were in the pit. All hell is broken loose. The giants will be there. And then what does it say? He confirms it again in verse 26 of Matthew 24. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, go not forth, because he's not returning till what? Lightning from one end unto the other. Do you understand the timing of this being here in this chapter about tabernacles, which is the 7 days to 7 years of tabernacles, as it is to the 7 years, the second 7 years, which is the 7 years of trumpet judgments? And at the midpoint, when the temple is built, that's when he goes in until the time when he's cut off, because they want to kill him and they go after him. And he's saying, look, you're not going to be able to find me and seek me. Where I go, you cannot come. It's so awesome, right? Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed among the Gentiles to teach the Gentiles? Where's he going to go? Okay? And then listen to this. Listen to this. Okay? We know the Lord will return feet down on the Mount of Olives at the start of this 14th year right here, okay, of tabernacles. And when it's over, it will be what? The Jubilee. The Jubilee, one of the things the Jubilee is called is the new beginning. But do you know that not only is the Jubilee called the new beginning, but so is the 8th day. The 8th day of tabernacles, which is also known as Shmini Aretz, right, is also called the new beginning. What? Shmini Aretz is called the new beginning, which is the 8th day of tabernacles. It's exactly the 7 years of tabernacles to the 8th year of tabernacles as the new beginning, as the Jubilee. What did we talk about earlier with the Jubilee? That when he's destroyed and done everything that he does in the final 14th year, or that 7th year of tabernacles, of trumpet judgments, then what happens? Well, this is what we talked about earlier. Ezekiel 47. Okay, water will issue out from under the threshold of the house, eastward and so forth. This is what happens at the beginning of the Jubilee, at the sounding of the trumpet, which will happen on the 10th day of atonement, or the 10th day of Tishri, which is at atonement, and all of the renewing of the earth will take place. You see, we talked about this earlier. Let me show it to you. It's in Isaiah, if I remember correctly, 61. And we see it right. Am I correct? 61. Let me try 60. It might be 51. Where is it? Oh, come on. Oh, 65. Just dawned on me. Here it is right here. 65, starting in verse 17. For behold, I create a new heavens and a new earth. Now, remember, this new heavens and new earth isn't the new Jerusalem coming down. This is the renewal, okay? A fresh thing. The rebuilding. You see this? To rebuild and to repair. This is when he repairs the earth at the end of that 14th year, when the water is going to issue out, okay? And it says in verse 20, Isaiah 65, verse 20, there shall be no more thence an infant of days, nor an old man that hath not fulfilled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old, but the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. And they shall build houses and inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and eat the fruit thereof of them. This is when all of the renewal takes place. This is when all of the earth is returned and renewed as the Garden of Eden was. This is what's going to take place in the final year of the Jubilee. And it starts with it right at the beginning of the Jubilee on the Day of Atonement. And it's connected to Ezekiel 47. And it says, after he brought me again unto the door of the house, and behold, waters issued out from under the threshold of the house eastward, for the forefront of the house stood toward the east, and the waters came down, and we see it over, and the waters are renewing and replenishing and restoring everything. And it says in verse 48, then said he unto me, these waters issue out toward the east country, and go down toward the desert, and go into the sea, which bring forth into the sea the waters shall be healed. Remember, the waters have to be healed, right? They have to be repaired. And it said, and it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, which moveth, whithersoever the rivers shall come, shall live. Okay? And there shall be a very great multitude of fish, because the waters shall come thither, for they shall be healed, and everything shall live whither the water cometh. Okay? Again, we've talked about this. We've shown this unto the John chapter 21. Okay, as this very end of days, this 140, sorry, not the 144, the 153 fish is a representation of those who had put their necks on the line, who will be resurrected at the time of the end. So we see this, and then what do we see? Okay, so we see this restoring and this renewing and this replenishing of the earth to bring it back as it was to the Garden of Eden. And this is going to be the inhabiting of the city, the millennial reign that's about to begin. But this everything has to be renewed first. And that's why you see it at the beginning of Ezekiel chapter 47, before he starts to give the portions of the land, beginning with Joseph and his 2 portions. And then you go to chapter 48, and all the tribes are given their portion of land. And the reason they're given their portion of land, Leviticus 25:13 says, in the Jubilee year, every man shall be returned everything to him. This is the end right here, when they will all come back, have made their way from the wilderness, be brought back, the earth replenished, and they will now receive their portion of land. So what do you think happens when we get to John chapter 7 a little bit later, when it all comes to an end, which we know it all comes to an end in the Jubilee year, which is the 8th day of Tabernacles. I'll show it to you again in a different way from our end time chart. These are your 7 years of seals, as the 7 days of unleavened bread. 6 years of tribulation. The Lord returns, destroys all the enemies. And then the 7th day Sabbath year, you see, that's why the Jews were upset. The 7th day Sabbath year, he heals them on, or makes man whole. It's the 7th day as the 7th year of unleavened bread. What did it start with? Feast of Weeks, right? Feast of Weeks, 4 months early. And then unleavened bread to the seventh day as seventh year and the solemn assembly. And then you had the 7 days as 7 years of tabernacles, of which there is no solemn assembly during any of the 7 days, because the solemn assembly is on the 8th day of tabernacles, which begins with the renewing and the restoring of the earth before he brings them in, or brings them back from where they had been protected, brings them back and gives them all their division of land. And how does it happen? You guessed it, by the water of life, just like you saw in Ezekiel chapter 47. So watch what happens now. John 7:37. In the last day, that great day of the feast, Jesus stood and cried, saying, If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. Bam! Brothers and sisters, I'll leave it at that, because it brings us right to the end of the 8th day of tabernacles. It is in perfect, absolute, incredibly astonishing layout, just in perfect reflection of all of these things that we have taught, of these 3 feasts in order, beginning with the more mysterious of the Feast of Weeks, before the 6 to the 7 of Passover unleavened bread, and before the 7 to the 8th of Tabernacles, all in order, 5, 6, 7. The 3 comings of the Lord. Brothers and sisters, it's awesome. God is so good. The revelations are, it's over the top. You see, this is one of those teachings where, had it been, you know, people coming that had never heard, or just brand new and not really gotten too far into it, they would think that we have absolutely lost our minds, that we're making stuff up and throwing stuff in that's not there. Yet I walked you through verse by verse by verse within these chapters, and each of them had a feast of the Lord. They called the Feast of the Jews, but they were the 3 feasts, with the mystery one first and the other 2 that followed. I don't even know what to say in these things. It's these types of things that nobody knows exists. There is no possible way for anybody to have ever understood these things existed, unless you have a deep knowledge of the revelation of the Gospels and the 14 years and the prophetic picture of the end of days, of pre, mid, and post, and his 3 comings and the events that take place in them. It is absolutely impossible. And you know how powerful this is? It wasn't me that found it. Oh, I went through greater details, but it was Jake who found it. Do you know why? Because there are hundreds, if not thousands of you around the world who have seen and have understood these things as I have, at least to an extent or another, and some who have seen it virtually as well as I have. If it wasn't true, how is it that others throughout the ministry are regularly bringing stuff to our attention to have a look through and bringing about incredible revelations like this? You see? Because it's true. And for those who diligently seek and search it out, these incredible depths of revelation are there for all who take the time to search and seek him in his word. Brothers and sisters, we know it and we trust it, that the Lord is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him out. And I do believe there is no, thus saith the Lord, there is no dreams or visions that I've had. I believe in the revelation of the scriptures that it's late January, early February of 2026. Not because just of Reuben, though Reuben tells us the month it's going to take place in whatever year it's going to be. But it's also the revelation of Scripture in the 70 years of Jerusalem and how to count it, and Israel when they came into the land. That's all I've got. And I hope on it, I trust on it, but don't sell everything. Don't quit your jobs, because we don't know with an absolute certainty, and you won't know with an absolute certainty until the Lord comes to that remnant group who he's preparing. And shortly, moments, however short before the pre-trib happens, and he speaks the words of Luke chapter 12 to you, to be girded about and to be like men who wait from their Lord when he returns from the wedding. Until that moment comes, we have no idea when the pre-trib is literally going to happen. But the revelation has revealed this timing in whatever year it will be, though the belief in that revelation, as I just said, is this year we're in right now, from Nisan 2025 to 2026, the 70th year of Jerusalem, as Leviticus 19, and Israel having come into the land as Leviticus 25, an account all the way from the decree of Christ in 30 AD when he decreed the Jubilee in Luke chapter 4. Brothers and sisters, I love you. I pray for you. I thank you. I'm grateful for you. And I look forward to the next one. God bless you all. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.